March 3rd, 2016, today held at our Gaming Commission offices. Our usual first item on the agenda is approval of minutes. Commissioner McDonald.
I move that the minutes of the meeting of February 18th, 2016 be approved, subject to any corrections, typographical errors, or other non-material matters.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. We're going to make one quick change in our schedule. Item 9C, which is the report of on a qualifier from our Investigations and Enforcement Unit. This will be relatively quick, we think and hope. We're going to make that first. So, Director Wells.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. It's my pleasure to be here this morning to report out on the investigation of the application for Konami Gaming Incorporated for a gaming vendor primary license. Konami Gaming, we did a scope of licensing for them and identified not only the applicant but 7 entity qualifiers and 14 individual qualifiers as part of the scope of the investigation. And then we evaluated Konami Gaming based upon the standards set in 23K, sections 12, 16, and 31, along with 205 CMR 13410, which included integrity, honesty, good character and reputation, financial stability, integrity and background, their history of compliance with gaming licensing requirements in other jurisdictions, whether the applicant was a defendant in litigation at the time of the application, the applicant's criminal history, if any, whether the applicant submitted an application that intentionally contained false or misleading information, whether the applicant committed prior acts that have not been prosecuted but formed a pattern of misconduct, and whether to what extent the applicant has associations with members of organized crime or other persons of disreputable character, and the applicant's cooperation with the IEB in connection with the background investigation. I'd like to comment on that last part, especially. I have with me this morning Nick Cassiello from Fox Rothschild, which represents Konami, Mr. Tom Gingoli, Chief Compliance Officer. During the course of the investigation, which Sergeant Gina Joyce was the lead, the applicant was extremely cooperative, forthcoming, and I would say in the course of the investigation, there were never any issues where they did not respond timely and appropriately. Under the Massachusetts law, an applicant for a gaming vendor primary license is required to establish their qualifications by licensure by clear and convincing evidence. I would suggest to the Commission, based on the information that we had, it was appropriate for us to recommend that the Commission award them a license and find them suitable for a gaming primary vendor license. Konami Gaming is a Nevada-based company that produces, manufactures, and distributes video slot machines in the casino industry. Konami Gaming also designs and develops Synchros product, an integrated casino management system for the gaming market. They're currently licensed in over 300 North American and international gaming jurisdictions. Konami Gaming, or KGI, is a 100% subsidiary of Konami Corporation of America, which in turn is owned by Konami Holdings Corporation. Konami Holdings Corporation is a public company that is based in Japan and is traded on the Tokyo and London stock exchanges. The stock in Konami Holdings is held almost entirely by 4 members of the Kazuki family, all of whom are individual qualifiers here. At its very essence, Konami is really a family-based business, and that's what we learned during the course of the investigation. The structure involving the other entity qualifier serves as a wealth and estate planning vehicle for the Kazuki family owners, and also serves to channel funds for charitable purposes in Japan. As part of the investigation, the IEB, among other things, reviewed the materials submitted as part of their application, requested and reviewed supplemental information as deemed necessary, and gathered information from a variety of governmental and non-governmental sources and databases, conducted criminal records checks, verified the accuracy of information as part of Konami's application, reviewed investigative files of gaming regulators in other jurisdictions relative to their backgrounds, investigations of KGI, and communicated by telephone through the course of the investigation with Mr. Gingoli and other members of the Konami group. Konami Gaming has no criminal record. The investigation revealed no civil litigation or threatens that threatens the economic viability of the business or would negatively impact licensure. We also did open media searches and looked for information in the public domain concerning Konami Gaming and found no information that would be of concern to the Commission. The IEB also evaluated Konami Gaming for financial suitability, integrity, and background by performing financial analysis and verification of its financial information. To further assess their financial stability, we performed several ratio analyses of operating results for a number of years. Those ratio analyses consisted of evaluation of liquidity, solvency, and profitability for the years under review. The financial investigation did not reveal any areas of concern that would negatively impact the suitability. The IEB also performed the requisite background suitability investigations of the 14 individual person qualifiers by virtue of their ownership interests, their ability to exercise control, or to provide direction to the applicant. And those individuals demonstrated by clear and convincing evidence that they also were, in the IEB's recommendations, they be found suitable by the Commission. I think it's important to note that Konami is a large-scale manufacturer of gaming machines and has a significant share of the market for those devices. Not only has Konami done business with Plainridge Park Casino, it's reasonable to expect that they may do business and probably will be doing business with Wynn and MGM as well. That business relationship continues beyond the initial delivery of the slot machines, including the maintenance of those machines and the production of new products. As such, the Commission will be having an ongoing regulatory role with Konami Gaming, and the investigation established a solid regulator-licensee relationship with the applicant and provided the IEB with a comprehensive understanding of not only their operations, but also the people that are the decision makers running this company. That relationship and that understanding, that'll be critical going forward. I'd like to especially compliment Sergeant Gina Joyce for not only doing an outstanding job with the investigation, but also in representing the Commission well in defining that regulator-licensee relationship. And I'd like to also give a special thank you to Marlon Polite, who completed the financial entity analysis. After being at the Commission for a very short time, he not only performed the work in an expedited manner, but also completed a sophisticated analysis of what needed to be done, given what we already knew about the company. I cannot emphasize again enough how cooperative Konami Gaming has been, especially Mr. Tom Gingoli, the Chief Compliance Officer here is with us today, along with Nick Cassiello from Fox Rothschild. So I have Mr. Cassiello and Mr. Gingoli. I think they wanted to make a few brief statements, and then I also have Sergeant Joyce and Marlon Polite here in case the Commission has any questions. But overall, the IEB is recommending that the Commission find Konami Gaming suitable for licensure.
Thank you, Director Wells. In light of the recommendation of the IEB, we don't feel a need to provide any sort of affirmative presentation. We are happy to answer any questions you have about the company. And perhaps after you vote, you'd indulge me for maybe a minute, because I'd like to say a few things.
Commissioners, any comments, questions?
Yeah. I would just like to comment on, first, the quality of the investigation. As someone who's read hundreds and hundreds of investigations, this was very well prepared, easy to follow, 50 pages, but I know how much more work is involved than what we see in those findings. And I would like to echo Director Wells' statements about how important it is for us as a new commission to set an example, to let people know that we're serious regulators, but yet we're very professional, we're thorough, and that is a relationship that we will have much longer than the five of us sit here, frankly. This is a company that we'll be doing business with for years and years and years, and to set that tone early as a regulator who is thorough but yet professional, I think, is critical, and I believe that we have set that tone for these investigations, and I just want to commend the team.
Any other thoughts, questions?
Yeah, well, I agree with all of that. I read the report. It's very thorough. I know if you're going to make some statements after we vote, I have some general questions about the industry, totally unrelated to to your licensure, and I'll save them for that time. But I think it's great that we're completing this very important licensure investigation.
I just had one, didn't really have to do with the suitability, but the Kazuki Trust and the Kazuki Foundation both have, at least in part, a philanthropic function or a commitment. And as best I could tell, one of them for sure, and the other one, it seemed, didn't really do much in the way of philanthropy. And one of them was, I think, like a 0.1% of the assets. I think that was the trust, right? Can you just explain what that's about? To lead with the philanthropic intent and then to not do much in the way in philanthropy seemed odd to me. But I realize these are Japanese corporations and entities, not ours, so maybe it's a different standard.
Well, with respect to the Kazuki Foundation, which was originally known as the Kazuki, I shouldn't say originally, but at one time was known as the Kazuki Foundation for Sports and Education, it, along with the trust, derives its income from dividends issued by Konami Corporation, and it does distribute those dividends to those endeavors. With respect to the Kazuki Trust,
It distributes all of that to those philanthropic endeavors? Or
Yes.
effectively all of that?
yes, that's all it does,
Okay.
yes. With respect to the Kazuki Trust, as you read from the report, the beneficiaries are the Swiss Red Cross, Doctors Without Borders, and one other. And you're correct, it has not distributed a significant part of those dividends to those beneficiaries yet, but it is the intent that it will do so. I know, for example, that the trust has made a long-term commitment to the University of Nevada in Las Vegas. Tom,
That is correct. Mr. Kazuki made a promise when we were initially licensed in Nevada back in 2000 that he would consider local endeavors within the state once they got licensed, and that's what some of the things they've done. The lion's share of that has gone to the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, of which we've probably contributed close to $7 million to the university over the past 6 or 7 years. And it's continually looking at, other endeavors throughout the North America.
So is the intent that all of that asset will be distributed, or is the intent that a percent will be distributed on an ongoing basis, or is the philanthropic function just one function and it has others? There are tax benefits to this structure, but that doesn't really necessarily mandate philanthropic distributions?
I mean, its only purpose is philanthropic.
It is, okay.
And it will distribute, how do I put this? It eventually will distribute all the dividends it receives for charitable purposes.
Somebody's going to get a lot of money
That is the
someday.
intent.
Because a huge amount of money has been building up in there. Okay.
I've been trying to get my name on that, but it hasn't worked.
Yeah, exactly. I had the same thought. Anybody else?
I echo Commissioner Cameron's points about this investigation, but knowing that you've gone through this in 300 other jurisdictions, I certainly would welcome your feedback as to what this experience was like for your organization.
Certainly, Commissioner, I'd be happy to. As I mentioned, earlier we were talking about this subject, that we do have a significant amount of licenses, and you'll see that with the other major slot manufacturers. And what I can tell you is that the Massachusetts Gaming Commission from day one with our organization has been great. They, led by Sergeant Joyce, they took the time to understand our company and certainly understand the culture. We're a little bit different. Obviously, we're a U.S.-based company. However, we have quite a few qualifiers and companies in Japan, and their culture is different than our culture. Even though they've been through this, several times, it's still not a normal thing for them to turn over their checking accounts and have people go through their tax returns. And I will say that your organization did a fantastic job of, not only doing their due diligence and doing the investigation, but focusing on our company and really understanding our culture. So nothing but high compliments from me and my entire organization with dealing with your team.
It's good to hear. Thank you.
I was going to wait until after you voted to address that issue, and I think both Tom and Commissioner Cameron have taken the words out of my mouth. I've been involved in representing companies in the gaming business for 36 years. Tom has been with Konami 16 years. I've represented Konami for about 16 years in multiple jurisdictions. I thought this was one of the most professional but thorough investigations I've ever been involved in. I was especially pleased by the organized, efficient manner the reports were written in. I can't say enough about it. I think, as Tom said, the staff really understood the company before they dove into the investigation. They took the time to learn about the company. That made things a lot easier. They were appreciative of the cultural differences. I just can't say enough good things about the staff. And I do want to say that I certainly think leadership starts at the top. And I don't see Lieutenant Connors here, but I'm sure.
He's back there.
Way in the back.
I'm sure a lot of the credit goes to him and to Director Wells.
I would just add one thing, that we spend a lot of time compiling these applications, and they do take a lot of time, and they're not obviously inexpensive to do that between paying the legal fees of my high-priced attorney sitting next to me. But a lot of jurisdictions, when we submit them, they don't read what we submit. And then we'll start to get questions that are clearly outlined in the applications that we've submitted. That didn't happen here once. You know, our company is a little complex when it gets to some of the Japanese stuff, so that is to be expected. But your organization did a thorough job of reading what we submitted in the thousands and thousands of pages and volumes of binders that we submitted to try and explain our organization before we got down to the time of the investigation. So when they came to our office to conduct the investigation, they already had complete understanding of our background and what our company did and how our company operated and how it was set up. So that was really important when we see that, and I have to tell you, we don't see that very often when we file applications. It's an exercise that we do, and you know, sometimes we just feel like the documents aren't even looked at, and they use the time when they come to the office to go through that, and that certainly was not the case at any point in time during the course of this investigation.
May I just add one thing with respect to timing? This is a multinational, multi-billion-dollar corporation. Other jurisdictions would have taken much longer to do what your staff did.
Great, well, thank you for those comments. That's really appreciated, much
Thank you.
appreciated. Not a surprise to us, frankly, but nevertheless, great to hear. Thank you. Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that the commission accept the report of the IEB and recommend that we approve the application of Konami Gaming, Inc. for licensure as a gaming vendor primary.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. Welcome and congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a couple of questions about the industry? So you mentioned, Mr. Jagoli, the costs of compliance, if you will, in terms of time and documents and fees, et cetera, can be substantial, not just here, but in many other jurisdictions. We're doing what we're directed to do by statute, and we'll continue to do that. But I think about, big picture, in addition to this, there seems to me that there's been quite a bit of industry consolidation in the gaming world, especially in the gaming software and equipment world, not necessarily with your company, but elsewhere. And I wonder if, on the one side, the cost of compliance acts as a little bit as a barrier, if you will, to some degree. And with industry consolidation, we may have less and less of these companies. I just want to hear your thoughts about that, what that may do to the long run for competitive purposes, for development of new products, staying competitive, et cetera.
Sure. So to tackle the cost issue first, for my company to get licensed, whatever jurisdiction that is, whether it's the Commonwealth or Nevada or New Jersey, it's very expensive because we're a Japanese company, right? So documents that typically other companies don't have to get translated and qualifiers. So it's always going to be more cost prohibitive for my company to obtain a license than, let's say, a company like, maybe IGT or Cygames, some of the other bigger, even larger companies, just because we're a multinational company. So we know that going in, right? That's a hard line. We know that that's going to cost us that. To touch on your point about consolidation, yeah, there's been some major consolidation in the manufacturing world. And we'll see how that plays out. I mean, I can tell you I've been in this business for 22 years on the manufacturing side. And 22 years ago, there was probably 6 manufacturers, and now there's close to 30 to 35 manufacturers. So you have a lot more fish biting at the bait, so we like to say. So there's still the large anchored manufacturers like ourselves and Cygames, IGT, Aristocrat, but there is also a lot of smaller entities out there that produce slot machines, and it's competitive. As far as the market, there's very few states left that don't offer some form of integrated resort-style casino gambling. So I think if you want to, grow your company or expand it, you have to come to states like Massachusetts and get a license. And quite frankly, that's one of the reasons that Konami went into this business 20-some years ago, because there is a barrier to entry, right? It's not for everybody, and it's not so much a financial issue, it's the background investigations. People just don't, want to go through that. So we consider that very important. That's why in any market that we go to, we would prefer a strict, robust regulatory system like you have here in the Commonwealth, because it'll keep other companies out. I mean, it's a barrier, it's a built-in barrier to entry. And we've spent millions and millions of dollars on licensing of our company. I mean, I'd be safe to say that we've probably spent as much, if not more, than any other slot manufacturer since inception getting licensed, because we are a multinational company. So having that barrier to entry, having those things like that, like having, technical standards, so your slot machines have to be approved in order to get on a casino floor, is very important for Konami to have that structure in place to keep other companies from wanting to enter that business. If they want to, they have to play by the same rules and regulations that we do. You have to file an application, you have to pay your fees, individuals have to be found suitable, the company has to be found suitable, and then more importantly, you have an ongoing relationship with the regulatory body moving forward. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it
There's a lot
does, very
there, but-
much. No, very much, right on point. I also am curious if the stock of the company is ultimately held by the family, why be a public company? Access to capital in the States and
Yeah,
Europe?
so Mr. Kazuki just, had always wanted his company to become public. If he started out as a jukebox repair company in 1969, and it's very distinct, honor and privilege in Japan when you have a publicly traded entity. And that was a big deal for him and his family to take the company to that point. We used to be traded on the New York Stock Exchange. We had ADRs, and we delisted about 2 years ago just because all the institutional investing was being done back in Japan, so it was cost prohibitive for us not to be licensed in New York. So, yeah, I mean, and it's important to him. We're on the first listed company of the Tokyo Stock Exchange, which is earmarked for, companies that have very good, regulatory filings and are very well thought of in the Japanese community. So it's very important for him to have his company listed on the exchange. And obviously it does, financing is available for us there.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, we're back to item number 3, which is an administrative update from Executive Director Bedrosian.
Sure. Good morning, members of the commission. If you don't mind, I will take 3A and B joint, sorry, 3A and C jointly, and then turn it over to Commissioner Zuniga for 3B. General update on the Valentine's Day flood of 2016. I'm happy to report that I think all the water damage to our office has been mitigated. Folks are back in their space. Any damage was dealt with promptly by our building folks, who we want to thank, and I want to thank Ms. Riley and our staff for putting up with what turned out to be just an inconvenience and not a destructive event. So, as I've said before, I continue to look on the bright side of that event. So,
Great. Yeah, I talked to somebody on the elevator from the 14th floor, and apparently they had it much worse.
yes, exactly. I think there were other folks in the building, unfortunately, who had
Yeah.
much worse. So.
And your sense of the building management's cooperation and reasonableness continues, that it's very...
It was they were very responsive there
Right.
within, hours, and also kept us well informed. The communication, which is always important, they were very communicative and responded to our needs. And if there are leftover things, we will get them addressed.
Okay.
So that's my general update. Region C update, as you know, we had a host community meeting in Brockton earlier in the week. Before that, we have accepted an invitation from the tribe to meet with them on March 15th, working out the details of that. But as a result of that meeting and anticipated presentation, we are going to, and we did not close our host community meeting. We anticipate going back down to Brockton probably the last week of March, and then that will necessitate a statutory delay in your deliberations, probably until the last week of April. But at the staff level, we continue to think that the information you will be provided on the 15th is very important information.
Yeah, I just want to say, I and others have repeatedly requested as much information as possible about the tribal situation in order to help inform the decision that we will ultimately be making on Region C. And I'm, for one, I'm tremendously appreciative of the tribe's willingness. I understand the issues of sovereignty and how this is not easy, and there are some delicate issues of relationship and status, and for them to be willing to invite us to their land to get a presentation on this is tremendously appreciated and helpful, and I hope you'll pass that along.
I will, and of course, we thank our applicant for their presentation earlier in the week and understand they may want to respond, and we will accommodate that also.
Right, that would be totally understandable.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's all I have. Commissioner Zuniga, I don't know if you want to talk about 3B?
Sure. Commissioners might remember that I passed along a memo on the last meeting relative to an risk assessment and internal audit function. This is the time of year when we do an annual risk assessment. And I, as the risk officer, and with Executive Director Day, will be overseeing some of that function in talking to different directors about, their procedures, et cetera, towards risk mitigation. In my view, as an update, I wanted to just report that I'm thinking of these in two ways. There's internal risks, many of which we currently address with directors and think about them in the finance and administration function, but there's also external risks now with a fully operational casino, most of which now are being addressed and certainly mitigated to a great degree with the presence that we have there with our Investigations and Enforcement Bureau. So the sole purpose of that memo was to update you. In my view, it is rather important that you are at least that the top, that the head of the agency is aware of these functions, and that was the pure reason of this update. But that is an ongoing process, a yearly process, and we'll continue to report as needed. And I can take any questions if anybody's interested.
Could you highlight some of your findings?
There's not there. Yeah, there's not yet any findings for this year. There's been a risk assessment done in the past. In my view, very much by department, and part of the reason of my enhanced focus on this is to try to think about it more agency-wide. So we'll be reporting those, if any, in the coming months. The way I think about it is there's risks everywhere. What we do is what we're thinking about to mitigate any one of them. We could always, let's say, lose a spreadsheet in the shared drive, and if that spreadsheet is very important and accessed by many people and gets ultimately lost or bugged or whatever, that could be a problem. But what we do is back up our shared drive every day, and the most we can lose if it's properly backed up, it's one day worth of work, let's say. That's how we think about the risk assessment, and we have to look at many areas.
And Commissioner Cameron, if I could jump in, one of the things I think Commissioner Zuniga and I have been talking about is just making sure we are consistent across our function groups. And this is also a way in which, we all talk about silos and making sure our folks who work so hard, and sometimes it even happens to us, I think, we get in our little lanes and we don't think collectively, but this is one way to make sure we are doing things collectively. All our risk assessment, which I think will drive other discussions, will make sure we're just uniform in the way the commission and staff addresses all these things. And my suggestion is Commissioner Zuniga and I will, put this tentatively on the agenda for 5 or 6 months, and then we will be able to work towards an update for the commission so it doesn't fall off our radar.
Mm-hmm. A second piece and that's key, that understanding and coordination. After this risk assessment, I think the next piece of this function, in my view, will be to check in with all of our compliance. For the most part, the legal department sort of owns a lot of the compliance calendar, what we have to submit per statute to the legislature, even if, for example, that gets produced by somebody else. And it's that coordination, across the agency that I think is critical.
Great.
And we're doing it. I'm not saying we're not. It's just that we need to be mindful of that everybody's doing what they're supposed to.
Thank you. Look forward to that update several months down the
Sure.
road here.
So that's all I have, and I'll leave it up to you if we want to go on to item
Yep.
number 4.
Yep, I'm now pleased to turn to our Director of Workforce and Supplier Diversity, Jill Griffin, with the next several big and important items.
Great, thank you, Commissioners. Chairman Crosby. As you know, when the casinos in Springfield and Everett open, we will have brand-new career opportunities for Massachusetts residents, including slot attendants, table game dealers, security, and surveillance officials. It will be no small feat to ensure that we have qualified individuals here in Massachusetts ready for the approximate 7,000 new casino jobs in eastern and western Massachusetts. Here today with me are representatives from the Massachusetts Casino Careers Training Institute. And they're here to give you an update regarding the establishment of gaming training schools in Massachusetts. And related to the many additional opportunities in food and beverage and hospitality, they will also highlight activities related to the scale-up of hospitality and culinary workforce training activities. And later on in the program, we'll hear from Bristol Community College to update us on the Culinary Arts, Tourism, Casino, and Hospitality Institute. But right now, I have Bob LePage to my right from the Springfield Technical Community College, Jeff Hayden from Holyoke Community College, and representatives from Bunker Hill Community College. We have Daryl Lamar, Executive Director of Workforce Development, and Interim Dean of the Division of Professional Studies, Dr. Wayne Wormley. So I'm going to turn it over to Bob.
Good morning. Thanks for giving us an opportunity to share our progress. I think we have a slide deck to run through.
You have the
Oh,
clicker
okay.
right in front of you.
Ooh, I don't think we're on the deck.
We could focus on
There
those
we go.
pictures a little longer.
No. So I'd start by just giving a general workforce update. You know, our goal when we started our journey, and it has been a journey, I think, for you as it has been for us, that was how we were going to work to ensure net job gains for the Commonwealth. As you're aware, the workforce situation across the state has evolved significantly in the last 3 or 4 years with dropping unemployment rates, increased pressure from employers looking for qualified applicants, longer job openings for qualified positions, and that's very key in this situation. Certain regions, particularly in the suburbs where the unemployment rates are very low, yet in our gateway cities they have remained particularly high. While they've dropped, they're still very high relative to what we'd like them to see. The other element for us has really been focused on capacity building. The size and scope of the scale-up is really a daunting challenge for the community colleges in many ways, and for each of the communities. We spoke of specific workforce development challenges that relate to this aging population. I'll give you an example. Manufacturing in our area alone projects in the next 3 to 5 years somewhere around 2,000 skilled technicians to retire. At the same time that in Western Massachusetts we'll be bringing up an employer with 3,000 jobs. So we have been working to balance different industry sector needs as part of our strategies. At the same time, we have to deal with the low educational attainment levels in our gateway cities in particular, in building strategies that will allow people to access these pathways and accelerate through them. We continuously hear of continued concerns of employers of how are we going to balance this effort against the regional needs and the community's needs relative to ensure economic stability for all different sectors. We'll talk a little bit about how we're doing that in Western Mass and some strategies we've deployed. Back to the scale-up size, I want to just remind people that in each region, we're talking about 10,000 to 13,000. That's probably a conservative estimate. We've heard as many as 20,000 people who will move through a process of awareness, being informed of the requirements, being informed of the opportunities, being aware of their situation relative to their backgrounds and other things that will have to be informed of the process to be employed. A recruitment strategy that will involve somewhere to 6,000 to 7,000 people in each region. To give you an idea, that would be every single student in Springfield Technical Community College. We service about 7,000. My colleagues at roughly 24,000, that would be 14,000. That would be half of their students, to give you an idea. It is a major undertaking. We have been working on electronic strategies that will support us in that effort, but it is a major undertaking for the Commonwealth as well as the community colleges in each region. Ultimately, to get a scale between 3,500 and 5,000 employees who are then qualified for employment in those regions. So a very large undertaking in what now is a relatively short period of time, about 30 months in Western Mass. Very important to reflect on the labor pool. I had an opportunity to meet with some other educational providers and some leaders on workforce in the state, and I remind them this is very much a vocational scale-up. These are vocationally oriented jobs primarily. They're associate's degree and or less, high percentage being high school and vocational training. It is a significant scale-up, but it is a vocationally oriented scale-up. The jobs that are on the upper end, there are adequate resources to fill those jobs through our higher education bachelor providers in the state. It's at the vocational level that we face the most significant challenge. We face it in all the vocational areas across the state, whether it's transportation, manufacturing, or trades, but this is a vocational scale-up. And as such, it has to work within some different educational constructs.
What does that mean exactly?
Well, there are constructs relative to, for example, using length of training programs and delivery of training programs. Many vocational programs don't fit credit delivery modality. So, an example, we'll talk about gaming jobs. Dealer school will have to be funded in a different model than normal Pell and federal funding of education. Right? So most of our students, 70+% of our students get aid at Springfield Technical College. That aid is provided through federal resources, Pell funding, that's attached to each individual's eligibility based on their financial situation. Because these are vocationally oriented programs, shorter in length, and done for vocational certificates, we don't have the ability to leverage, in many of these occupations, Pell funding. Okay. And I'm going to give an example of how we're trying to build some strategies to do that. But it does mean that many of these jobs we've had to develop alternative funding strategies.
Okay, that's really interesting.
We're going to talk a little bit about the gaming schools at the beginning, a little bit about MCCTI. As you recall, the goal of the community colleges was to develop regional strategies that had an overarching consistent theme, particularly in the gaming occupation areas where we wanted portability across the Commonwealth of credentials. So we wanted a credential that was of the same value in Boston or in Brockton or at the Native American eventually facility or in Springfield, so that there was the ability to move within the state and ensure that the quality of the certificate was transferable and recognized with industry partners of being in value, and that it was aligned to having the proper number of hours in instruction so that person was properly prepared to be onboarded to our partners. We've started with the Casino Career Training Institute of developing some career resources for individuals that allows them through the website to be able to go in and start to investigate careers and being aware of careers. It will eventually then tie to each institution who is offering courses so that people across the Commonwealth can see where training is available, when it starts, how it ends, what's its price, what the model is for it. It takes multiple types of careers in order, so not just the gaming careers, but it does have information about hospitality, culinary careers, back of house operation and hospitality careers. It's, again, to start to get a statewide approach to providing consistent information about the requirements. It will link to the Gaming Commission relative to the employability requirements, which, as you know, are a very important component of the scale-up strategy. So that's up now live, and we do have people, and we do feed people to it for informational purposes. As we get closer to the launch of the recruitment stage, and I'll talk a little bit about timing, certainly we expect activity to accelerate. The gaming school process has been a work in progress. As you know, that the goal was that within each region, one of the host colleges, the lead host, would provide a facility, a secure facility, where we would train people relative to the standards of the gaming school set by the commission, that facility would be in partnership with the resort in the local market, that there would be a pipeline of students, that the process would use a standardized assessment approach. We are going to be using a tool called Career 101 that will allow us to assess candidates on the front end, gather data on their current abilities in reading, mathematics, and locating information. It is a national tool. At the same time, it is a tool that The Mass Department of Labor is rolling out to all career centers and adult basic ed programs. So we'll have a platform that will be used across the Commonwealth, but will feed into the gaming school as well. I talked about standardized curriculum. We've talked in the past that we'll be adopting the Atlantic Cape Community College curriculum that is used in many states across the Commonwealth, and in fact globally. It's kind of the gold standard in community college and educational provider worlds. We've started the process of looking at how the community colleges can do pre-CORI. We understand that there will be a CORI process for the Gaming Commission. The community colleges regularly do a CORI process for some of our programs, in particular our nursing and healthcare, where there is an employability requirement to have a CORI, so we do a pre-CORI that informs people not to rule them out for coming to educational opportunities, to inform them if there's a barrier in the process. An example of that would be in nursing, where we inform you that you will not be able to do your nursing clinical and be employed, but you can still take the training if you're qualified. As an open access institution, we have to follow those state guidelines, but we do inform people that you have a situation and it needs to be resolved. We have had dialogues with UMass about how we're building our data systems. We will use the college's enrollment systems, which will allow us to have reportable data back on each of these students to the Gaming Commission, and we've had dialogues with the UMass about how we can align that, so you'll have pre-enrollment, enrollment data, post-enrollment, job placement data that you'll have as part of your research project. So you'll take it from initiation through employment to be able to see what are the completion rates, long-term, how are the wage gains working. We'll be capturing the same type of demographic data that will be aligned to their system. So again, it will dovetail your experience with Penn National, but we'll be able to do it in the pre-hire process prior to the training programs.
Bob, are you going to, you made me speak to this later on, but how do you have one facility where you have multiple community colleges? How does that work?
In each of the regions, we've worked with the developer to determine where they feel the location should be. So in the case of our dialogues now, well, these are not signed agreements, but I think it is safe to communicate the developer in Springfield, we anticipate it will be on our campus or it will be right downtown. We are dealing with the facility issues, which the most difficult part, believe it or not, is the parking issue. Because for us to add 300 or 400 or 1,000 cars additionally in a day is a significant challenge, and I can more than echo it being a challenge for my colleagues.
So will Bunker Hill be the facility? Is that the physical space?
That is the desire of
Wynn?
of
Okay.
Wynn.
But will Roxbury and Mass Bay and others be able to feed into that and still have
Yes.
their students at that facility? And the same with Holyoke and Springfield Tech?
Right. All the community colleges will be able to feed in students.
Okay.
It is not unusual for community colleges to take courses at multiple sites now.
Okay. So you can figure out how to spread the payments out and so forth?
Yeah. It'll have to be it'll be one centralized system.
Yeah.
There'll be a referral system in.
Okay, great.
I'll just talk a little bit about the dialogue on facilities, because that really goes back to timeline, and I know this is small print. But we have worked with the developers from two perspectives. One, starting to put together those chart of activities that have to happen, agreeing on the length of the training and the intensity of the training. Most of these trainings will be 20 hours a week of instruction. It is very similar to a job environment. You get some sense of the number of training hours in the example of a projected enrollment in the Springfield market. That does have some assumptions to it relative to the number of table games that will be available. Estimated number of days trained to be completed before opening is starting to get a sense on the length of the training and the onboarding. It's been an ongoing dialogue with the developers of how we're going to take and move through this process to pass people off, and ensuring that there's enough time for the hiring process to happen in line with the employment process. So I'll give this example. If we need to have people employed to support MGM in August, then we need to have them start the hiring practice 60 days before that. And then we have to work backwards of when they need to be trained, what are the facility constraints of the number of people that can be trained at a time. So we have started working through all those steps with each of the developers to start to say, when do we need to go? This will be a massive scale-up. We know that a big part of this process is going to be the career awareness, which we believe has to start late this summer and into the fall. To move, if you take the 700 jobs in MGM that would be related to the training, that means we're probably going to train somewhere around 1,000, given the attrition that will go through the training. We'll have to pre-qualify 3,000 people. That is a very significant career awareness and assessment process that will have to be done, again, electronically using Career 101s to get people qualified to enter the gaming school. So we're going to need 2 years for this process to fold out. We've worked on budgeting with the developers based on the number of students, the process, and the administration, and it's about a $2 million endeavor to move this number of people through.
Per developer?
Per developer.
Just
per
for
region.
awareness? Just for the awareness?
No, for the entire project.
All right.
For the entire project.
Okay.
We have had discussions on a funding model, and I think that's for future dialogue, but we realize that this is going to have to be a shared funding model. We are very conscious of our early discussions with the Gaming Commission of developing a model that ensures affordable access to individuals who are seeking these jobs, in a method that this isn't just solely on the back of the community and the individual, that we have to have a shared resource to do this. There is a large benefit to those people who get hired through this process. We understand that, but affordability and access is key. A comparable example of a 144-hour vocational training program is roughly a $1,200 training program at most community colleges. Certified nursing assistants being a comparable length, or a CNA plus program is somewhere between $1,000 to $1,800 depending on. But we know for many of the individuals who are high school level who will go into these jobs, $1,000 to $1,200 out of their pocket is a significant educational investment. Again, unfortunately, we can't leverage Pell funding like we do for other educational areas. We have this construct issue. We have worked at the 2 community colleges in Western Mass to develop a system so these students could pay over a period of time. And again, we hope to be able to develop a payment process or a funding model in partnership with each developer that will be a statewide funding model. I think that's to come, but we have had a lot of discussions.
You're taking it as your theoretical mandate to address the entire employment need, right? I mean, so there are other sources. Obviously, there are other programs out there, some of whom are doing similar kinds of training. There are other multitude of hospitality and resort and casino training and so forth, as well as people who already have the skills and so on and so forth. But you're for the sake of your target, at least, for your objective, you're assuming that you're going to have to do it all.
We assume that for the gaming schools, that there will be some additional gaming schools that will open in the Commonwealth. It is an expensive proposition to undertake. We anticipate giving the commitments that the developers have made to local hiring and host surround community hiring, that there will need to be a significant portion of the total gaming jobs that will have to be trained up. So using the example in Western Mass with 90% committed to a roughly 20-mile circumference, that means 90% of the 700 jobs are going to have to be filled by local residents.
Right. Yeah, no, I think it's great that you're doing it. And you know, as a practical matter, I think we're going to need everything we got. You know, so if you go at it full bore to get 100%, maybe you get 100%. Chances are you won't, and there'll be other people coming in too. So I'm all in favor of that. I think it's great.
Yeah, our
And I
goal
wouldn't-
is that we
and-
want to have this systematic for the state, and it has to be part of in each region, a workforce development strategy that's good
Right.
for everybody. And that we really have worked hard at that. We have ongoing roundtables now developed for each of our sectors, where those leaders come together quarterly and talk about the workforce challenge. We've re-engineered other parts of our programs, manufacturing being an example, where we've built new pathways to expand the manufacturing labor pool. So we're We're trying to do it as a comprehensive workforce strategy as best we can. The gaming is very unique, though. It takes, I know you've probably had the conversation many more times than I have, but people knock on my door, call me and say, I want to be a dealer, and I say, well, do you like to stand? No, I don't like to stand. Do you like people? No. How do you feel about math? Absolutely not. Perhaps there are,
How do you feel working the night shift?
yeah, do you want to work night shift? You want to work, there are many other job opportunities within the resort casino, but let's get you on path. The Career 101 tool, I should mention, is a very important component for the state, and I really give accolades to the Commonwealth to be in it, thinking about this strategically, because anybody who comes through this process will be evaluated on their baseline skills, not for gaming, but for employment in the Commonwealth in all jobs. So if Bob LePage does the assessment of Career 101 and he scores at these levels, they can look and say, you are job ready for these jobs in all these industry sectors. And that's very important of giving a statewide capability. So while it's being rolled out, it is very important to this scale-up in particular, but it is a very important tool for the Commonwealth.
Bob, it sounds like you want people to be successful, not just take a course that, in all probability, they may have trouble being successful in that area.
Absolutely. We know that from our programs we've run that Jeff Hayden will talk about, we know that pre-assessment is very important, and that informing people of the environment that they will work in reduces attrition in the program and reduces turnover for the employer. If we don't set proper expectations, we're wasting their time, their money, the Commonwealth's money, and our capacity. So we really believe pre-assessment process is key to the strategy.
Right. Have you had any conversations since, say, Land and Trust with the folks from the tribe in order to see what their needs will be?
We have not, I have not. I don't know if my colleagues at Bristol have had any direct dialogues on timelines with them, but I think given what the original goals were, it would be the same, similar. There's similar occupations. It's going to be a similar process.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm on the just another note on the pre-assessment. We do have a role in some of these in licensing a lot of the anybody or registering anybody that works at the casino at varying levels of, as you know. The key gaming employees get certain investigation and background, and the registrants get just registered, et cetera, et cetera. I'm curious at a later time to understand. Well, at least conceptually, I would imagine that some level of information would be part of that. And I can give you a quick example. There is a number of things that may not be disqualifiers, for example. But is something that we will look to have people take care of prior to employment. And having that understanding is going to be, I think, critical for your assessment.
Yes, that's actually later, but I'll hit it now. In our next steps, we believe we need to develop a consistent curriculum that we can deploy that talks about career awareness, but also what are the steps to employability that would incorporate those elements at each of the levels. While I'm concerned about the key gaming level, I'm most concerned at the other levels.
Yeah.
But we do know that we need a standard curriculum that may be able to be delivered in our career one-stop centers and at our community and our community-based organization, because we know that the referral process happens in the neighborhoods for all of our community colleges. So we do see that as an immediate next step is secure funding to develop a standardized state curriculum for that, so we can get a train-the-trainer model.
Just to reinforce, excuse me, Lloyd, go ahead.
Yeah, this, I think, may relate to what you've just been talking about, but to what degree are you focusing on developing a curriculum which would provide skills that could be applied afterwards outside of the gaming context? A concern that I would have is that in the programs for training new employees for casinos, that it might be so narrow in the skills that if the market changes, or if for one reason or another the person is not suitable for the gaming industry, that this may be kind of wasted time as far as their employability in industries outside of gaming. Could you address that?
Yeah, I can address it. From the beginning, we've seen this as two strategies, one for the gaming-related occupations and one for regional workforce strategies for hospitality and culinary. For the gaming occupations, the way we've been working on the curriculum is it does have some workforce readiness modules in it, so how to behave in the workplace, what are workplace expectations, what are proper behaviors, a strong customer service focus. These are very much customer service technical jobs. So transportable skills that would allow you to move into a retail environment, call center environment, a sales environment. The technical skills are probably 75 to 80% of the curriculum, but probably 30 to 40% of the curriculum is on job preparedness and customer service orientation. So they will have significant transferability to other employment opportunities. The score that they'll get on the assessment, they could look and say, well, this is the score 333 on math, the math index, the reading and locating information, and that also would qualify you in these other occupations where I'm going to get transferable skills.
That's particularly relevant because what Commissioner Stebbins is always talking about, which is the likelihood of a backfill need, that the sources will come from, employees will come from some other similar skill, and the problem will be in the banking industry or the other hospitality industry or whatever that's losing people. So that's a particularly important point.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about those industries.
Okay, great.
Strategies that we've deployed in Western Mass on that. I just wanted to, again, mention the importance that we really need to get our staffing model and our funding model resolved, because we're going to need to get this underway relatively soon. So I'm going to work with Jeff on a Western Mass update, and want me to get the slides for you? Sure.
So one of the things that we've been able to do is, as Chairman Crosby was pointing out, is to find other sources that could provide dollars to do training. And so we've done that in the hospitality culinary area. We've gotten probably about $150,000 over the past year and a half to be able to do that type of training. We're also in the process of applying for $200,000 from the Commonwealth for the Workforce Competitiveness Trust Fund program. And so that's an additional $200,000 that we hope to hear about soon. With those kinds of dollars, we've been able to scale up and do training. The other piece in terms of finding dollars is that both colleges have a long history in working with adult basic education and English for speakers of other languages. And so by combining our efforts together, we've actually beefed that up even more. We both have increased our enrollment dramatically. However, we're still just scratching the need for ABE and ESOL for the average citizen in Springfield, Holyoke, or the region. We've scaled it up. We're doing more, but there needs to be a focus, especially for the occupations we're talking about in relation to the casino resorts, that we transition folks from who have basic educational needs or language needs, that we transition them back into the workforce. In Western Massachusetts particularly, but across the Commonwealth, our population growth has been limited. Boston obviously sees a much different future in terms of population, but in Western Mass and in the Southeast, that population growth is limited, and therefore, where are we going to get workers? Well, we've got to take people who are already in the region and get them the tools and the skills they need to get into those jobs. So that's our focus on ABE is very important there. With the culinary training that we've been able to do, we've created a workforce readiness certification process, and essentially we offer 4 different modules in relation to hospitality and culinary, one for food preparers, one for food servers, one for supervisors, and then one for hospitality, lodging, hotel operations. Through that process, we've been able to offer either one of those modules or all of those modules to individuals. And this, over this year and a half period, we've served a total of 228 people. We're just gearing up for the next round to start, which is starting in late March and going through the rest of the spring. But we've done 228. Of those, the majority have been incumbent workers, so people already in the hospitality and culinary industry, and we tried to get them additional workplace certifications. You hear about stackable credentials all the time. So ServSafe, TIPS, OSHA 10, anything that they might need to either have them advance in their career, or as I like to say, help them get a job, get a better job, or do their job better. And so of those 228 people, we've provided over 318 certificates of those stackable. So obviously, many of them have gotten more than one. We've had a completion rate of 90%, so 90% of the participants have completed the program. And of those who've completed the program, 82% have been placed into jobs or have advanced in their jobs. And so we know from that exercise that we've done through state dollars that we can continue to serve a large number of folks who need those fundamental, maybe short, but fundamental skills to do hospitality and culinary jobs. And we've also incorporated not only Career Ready 101, which Bob mentioned, but we've also incorporated the National Career Readiness Certificate. So it's a national credential that defines someone's employability by certain skill levels, and it defines them in, you know, the levels of bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. But someone with those credentials can walk into an employer and say, "This is what I've learned, and this is what I'm competent in." We've also developed within that whole package more on customer service. To your point, Commissioner, about how can someone transfer skills, customer service is one of those that's broad-based. It doesn't matter if you're in the insurance industry, in the banking industry, retail, restaurant, banquet. That customer service really is a fundamental basic skill that we're trying to do. We have, so you see on the slide, it says that we've got about $2 million in grants that we've been working on for these various efforts. In addition, the next slide is.
Just make a couple of quick comments to give you an idea on the scope of change in adult basic ed in the city of Springfield. About 3 years ago, the college had a program that served about 60 students annually. Now I'm serving close to 550 students annually in adult basic ed. I checked with our director yesterday, and I have a waiting list, just City of Springfield residents, about 270 people. Each of these people have gone through 2 3-hour assessments to get on the list. Unfortunately, the list is so long, it's like going to the Starbucks downstairs and having that line go around the block. People don't even want to get in the line anymore. These are all individuals who want to get on a pathway to jobs, but because of our limited funding from state resources, we haven't been able to get them in the system to move them through to employment. That is a major scale up for the 2 institutions. We did that jointly, which is, as you know, a little unusual to have 2 community colleges. Holyoke Community College provides the ELL expertise on my campus in Springfield. So it is a joint regional effort. I also wanted to mention the customer service certificates. We now have 1 year, actually they're not 1 year, I shouldn't say that. We have 16 to 20-week customer service degree-oriented pathways that have been put in place. They allow a student to come on a fast track. In our world, that's 16 weeks. They don't run on academic calendar, so they will be starting multiple times during the year. We are piloting it now. It qualifies for federal financial aid, which I have to be honest with you was some real noodling on how to make that work at our institutions. But what we believe is that is an opportunity to scale people through the system with customer service credentials who will be able to go into multiple industries. So that's a new capability in Western Mass that both institutions will have to deliver. We know in our previous model, when we did it non-credit, we moved 60 students through. We had an 80% completion rate, and 75% were placed in jobs within 60 days. So we have a model that we think can help scale using some federal financial aid, but again, we can't make all programs work within those models.
In our efforts over the last couple of years, we've doubled our capacity in this area of ABE, ESOL. Unfortunately, though, that still means that we're only scratching about 10 to 15% of the demand that's in the Springfield-Holyoke region. So there's a large number of people who haven't had access to this kind of training. Why is it important to the effort we're talking about in terms of workforce? Because again, for us to scale up the workforce, those are the people that are available and here in the region that potentially could fill these jobs. Because they're not flying in from some other place. They're not going to travel an hour and a half from someplace in Vermont or someplace in upstate New York. We really need to get folks in the region engaged in this. So it's a scale-up issue. It's also, in terms of economic development in Western Massachusetts, it is the largest single issue that limits economic development. Companies saying, whether they're manufacturers, whether they're hospitality, companies saying, I can't find the qualified people, so I'm not growing. I don't want to do that $5 million expansion because I can't find the people to do it. And that's not anecdotal, that's commonplace.
Is the answer to the problem of addressing only 10 to 15% of the demand, is that coming? I mean, are you going to tell us how you're going to try to get to the other 85%?
Yeah.
Okay.
On the hospitality and culinary side, Holyoke Community College is the only college certificate and degree program for hospitality and culinary training in the region, in all of Western Massachusetts. There are some private vendors who provide it. And then there are the vocational schools that provide some of it. And so we see it as an opportunity not only to meet the need, potential need of the casino developer, but to meet the existing need. So last year alone, just to give you a small example, line cook, which is an entry-level cooking position, there were 400 available slots in Western Massachusetts. I shudder to think what that number is in Boston. So right now, we need to train people for these jobs, not waiting for MGM a year and a half from now. So our effort has been to scale up our capacity. So we've announced the past couple of weeks that we're doing a $5.2 million project to create a new culinary and hospitality center. And Commissioner Stebbins was gracious enough to be at that announcement. And that center will enable us to double our capacity in our credit programs, and it will also enable us to grow our non-credit programs. Our goal for our non-credit programs is to have approximately 500 students a year going through the training. As I mentioned before, last year and a half, we've done 225, give or take. And so it really is a desire to increase our effort on the credit side. We'll be offering a new certificate a new degree in culinary, so a culinary science degree. And then we continue to offer food service management, hospitality management, and other related programs. Many of you have met President Messner at our college, and so you know that, he's about, 6'7", and he put one of these chef hats on at the announcement, and just made him even more daunting in terms of his height. So we're very excited about this facility. I will tell you, in terms of the finances of it, and it gets to your point, Commissioner, about finding other sources. We've got $1.75 million from the Commonwealth. We got about $175 from the federal government through an EDA grant, and the college is putting in $2 million. So that kind of model, I think we need to expand when we talk about training. There will need to be additional resources from the Commonwealth especially in terms of training. As you can see, the training that we've done in relation to this has been largely funded by state dollars. We'll also need commitments from the employers, and not just the casinos, but also the current employers in the region. We've got, as Bob mentioned, in each sector, we've developed roundtables. We have about 30 hospitality and restaurant businesses that meet on a regular basis with us, at least quarterly, oftentimes more than that, and they're advising us in terms of curriculum, they're advising us in terms of how to place folks in jobs and the like. And so that collaboration with business, we hope, will help us place folks beyond the casinos into these jobs.
I'm just going to hit two quick things. I know we're running a little late. You know, you asked about what is the impact or how do you fund this. We've had some preliminary dialogues in each of our communities about what it would take to move 250 people. What would it cost for me to take 250 people and feed them into the system? And what would be the benefit? So I just put together a simple chart. So I'll just run you through it from top to bottom. If you look at the cost of an individual, there is a study that was done a few years ago by Northeastern, and that somebody who doesn't have a high school education, there's a cost to the Commonwealth and others of about $2,600 in benefits that they're provided. Once they're educated, there's a $7,000 swing in tax in benefits. So as you start to multiply that, there is a very significant immediate return on investment of moving these people from unemployed to employed, and that's where the benefit of the net job gains. It's focusing on getting those people into the labor pool, not cannibalizing the labor pool, and it is on the bottom end. The part that's most important is that dollars invested here have an immediate return. The model that we're developing that is an accelerated program focused on those who are closest to achievement. At least in Western Mass currently, you must have a high school education to be employed at MGM. That is their corporate practice. That means we're going to have to move people through this level. We know there is a significant return on the Commonwealth. We're talking about co-investment models with the Commonwealth, but again, these are individuals who don't have wealth. If the Commonwealth, the Gaming Commission, the Commonwealth Department of Labor want to move people into jobs, it's going to take an investment, but there is an immediate one-year return on investment. These will be people paying taxes. We have to move them from the non-paying of taxes to paying taxes and having livable wages. We have, just quickly on the MGM front, we've mapped 75 skill areas into the SMART system. Those will all be tied to the courses and the programs at the community colleges, as well as into the MCCTI platform, so that people who come through SkillSmart will start a referral process. That mapping has happened. Once they're ready to launch, we'll be adding additional mapping areas. That was quite an undertaking. We have started a construction and trade focus. This is the areas where we already have programming, but we are expanding our construction and trade, including developing new blueprint reading training classes for entry level and the development of a workforce readiness certificate in construction. We've just started a construction roundtable in Western Mass with the larger employers. We know that many of these jobs will be union, but to be able to be qualified in the unions, in many of the unions, I would add, you have to have a high school credential to get in the union, and they want pre-apprentice skills. So we're developing a pre-apprentice strategy. I hesitate to say pre-apprentice because it is not just limited to union tracks. It will go to new non-union track employers in our region. So here are our next steps. It's the funding model for the gaming school is the top of the list. Construction and trade workforce roundtable. We need to get a better sense on that in each of the regions, really how deep that is. I can't commend our friends at MGM. They have been very good about sharing information, and they have aggressively started collaborating on that model with community-based organizations and the community colleges. We know diversity is a major part of the challenge in the construction trades as well as these other areas. A couple of areas we're going to be looking for funding strategies. We know we need a statewide curriculum and getting that developed. We know in the Boston market It's really the time that we do a citywide workforce needs assessment for hospitality. For us to deploy all the new things that we talked about today started with doing a very formal needs assessment of what were the shortages, what would it look like, what are the pathways, what are the educational provider capacities. That was really what led us to getting federal funding, is they could look and say, you're right, there's jobs. The constraining factor is physical space. We'll help you resolve that. We really believe we have to get a strategy to do that in the Boston market. The growth of the hospitality industry is massive in the city, but there isn't a workforce plan for it. We talked
There
about the
is.
workforce readiness and HISET.
Jill and Commissioner Stebbins do know about, the group affiliated with Unite Here that's very much focused on this and has done a lot of research, talking to hotels and downstream hotels, and have their own aspirations for helping to add to the workforce, but also with the same funding model problems. Are you guys in touch with those folks?
Yeah, we've talked to Marie a number of times in the
Okay.
past. Yeah. In the Boston market, it's clear you need a workforce strategy for the Boston market, and it's massive. It's beyond the scope of one provider
Yeah.
in the hospitality. It's just a massive challenge, and it needs a regional strategy. And I know the community colleges are interested at the leadership level. Dr. Rubenzahl and Dr. Messner have had recent discussions about ways we could develop a strategy for the region to do a needs assessment and get those big employers. Interestingly, I know we're short on time, but for us, the hospitality eye-opener was the situation with our local hospital, the largest employer in our region, who is also the largest culinary provider. They have 12,500 employees they feed and a lot of patients each day, and they are short of workers now. They're the ones most concerned about this, that we develop a systematic approach to culinary. All of their culinary workers are quarried. They are very concerned.
So,
And in the Boston area, you have a couple of.
Move the mic over, Jeff.
In the Boston area, you have a situation now where that lack of trained employees exists, and that you have temp to perm agencies starting up, that like Snap Chef, for example, that has large corporate clients where they deploy chefs on a daily basis and culinary staff because of the lack of available permanent staff.
And this issue also gives us the opportunity to work directly with specific employers. So with Bay State, 2 weeks ago, we started a Serve Safe program for Bay State. And we're doing that kind of training regularly now with them, and we'll continue to do that. We're going to scale it up into other areas as well. But it's those types of relationships are developing. They're developing fast, and we're flexible and adaptable enough where we can do it fast in response to their needs.
I'm thinking about this shared funding model and strategies that you are thinking about. Sorry. Have you, can somebody tell me if there's the tax that cities and towns can apply on food and beverage? Has that been implemented in some of the host or surrounding communities? Could this be a source that local leaders should contemplate?
Most of those cities already have adopted it and
Yeah.
allocated those resources to other areas.
Right.
That's one of the challenges that we're going to face in this dialogue, is having municipalities and other people understand that this is a new source of need of funds. Budgets are tight, and they're going to look at those resources that they've already allocated to their operations of their cities. So I did go down that road with a couple of municipalities, and it wasn't warmly received. For the funding models, I think there are multiple funding models. The jobs that are gaming jobs have a different funding need because they have very unique employers. The regional workforce funding models are different. The hospitality industry model is different. The ABE model is different in its funding. So there are 3 or 4 different funding models that have to be deployed. But ultimately, these funding models are ROI-based. The good news is that we have many employers seeking qualified applicants. Our barrier in the middle is the funding model. I have people who are interested in the jobs, but I need the funding. When we have the funding, we've proved we can put them in paying jobs, sustainable wages. There's just a funding gap.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you know, this will sound cold, but ultimately, this is a decision by the Commonwealth. You know, we have done everything we can to build an infrastructure and capacity, but ultimately, the Commonwealth will decide if it wants net job gains. Because the key is the funding model in the middle. There is no funding model, then there will not be as large of net job gains, and it won't be as large of an economic ripple to our community. It is a once-in-a-generation opportunity, and the Commonwealth will make that decision. We will strongly advocate, but it will be a Commonwealth decision. The community colleges do not have external budgets that they can deploy. Our budgets are flat again this year. We do not have resources that we're going to be able to deploy to this.
Is there a strategy for this? I mean, is there a bucket of money that is available if the Commonwealth decided to use it? Or is there, have you guys put together a strategy to try to?
I think there are some strategies on some of the gaming dollars that might be reinvested by the Commonwealth back in itself. I think there's some strategies relative to the gaming schools where a portion of the cost of running the gaming schools would be borne on the success. I mentioned in the past of a pay-for-success model. We believe strongly that these individuals will be successful. We feel that the developers who are going to directly benefit, if we can move these people through to their employment, quite candidly, we're going to save them a lot of money. It's money that they should be investing in these programs. The hospitality and where it's a general community need, it's a Commonwealth model.
I get that. I'm talking about a specific plan that says, here's how much we need, here's where it could come from, here's the strategy we need to try to make that happen. You know, so for whether it's 2 or 3 for the different buckets or whatever, we're more than happy to be, involved in the conversation about trying to figure out how can you make these plans work, but they need to be specific.
So we have had some specific discussions, but I don't think we're really there yet on understanding the mechanism to make that happen on a number of these resources.
Okay. Well, as you well understand, it's a huge gating mechanism, and that, the distance from cup to lip on a funding strategy is a big distance, so the sooner you can identify, doesn't have to be the only alternative, but, sooner you can identify a yesable proposition that various parties involved can try to get people to say yes to, the better we can finally all put our shoulders to that wheel. But
I think honestly, Commissioner, I think we're pretty close on a couple of them. We have run into the same challenge that I know you've run, which are the extending dates on confirmation of start in project and hiring. And that has caused people to back away from the table and say, well, we need to get this done before I'm going to commit to that.
Yeah. All right. Well, the sooner the better.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm pleased to see things starting to crystallize in Eastern Mass, too. Western
Yes.
Mass has been at this, but it's great to have Bunker Hill involved in this.
Well, we're, Dr. Wormley and myself, we're a fairly new team at Bunker Hill. And I'm very fortunate to have him as my dean because he has some experience in this. He comes from the Philadelphia area. So we are ready to hit the ground and running.
Great. Well, and we're all familiar with both the needs and the assets at Roxbury too.
Yeah.
And they're looking for functional partnerships to move people into. So as well as the others, but particular Roxbury is one that's got a tremendous resource of folks.
Exactly.
But needs partnerships, needs administrative support and so forth. So
Exactly. And we know the people there personally. I have personal relationships there.
great.
Thanks.
Yeah, we're very excited. I've been here since November and hit the ground running. We think we're in a prime location, obviously, for the Wynn Casino. It's really about let's move it on, but we are in the process of getting things lined up. We already have a culinary degree in program. We already have hospitality. So it's really an issue of space. It's really an issue of networking and the collaborations with Roxbury and the other area institutions and moving forward. So we're excited about that opportunity.
Great.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just interrupt and just put it on your mind, the issue of scheduling for the rest of the meeting. We have this presentation, and then Director Vanderlyn has an outside guest on agenda item 5. It may be, and I obviously leave this to the commission's discretion, do we want to do this presentation, Director Vanderlyn's presentation, and maybe take a break, and then we can address our internal business after lunch, if we get to that point. Again, I put that on your radar.
Okay. All right. Director Griffin, you got another one for us.
Yes, and I actually have a group of vendors following this. I think you were, okay. So I have here guests from Bristol Community College for a brief presentation and update on a new degree program that will benefit the casino industry. To my right, I have Director John Carissimo, who's Director of the Culinary Arts, Tourism, Casino, and Hospitality, the Catch Institute. And to his right, I have William Barati, Dean of Business and Information Management. Paul Vigilant, Acting VP of Workforce Development, is here. And Anthony Ucci, Associate Academic Vice President, is also here. So I'm going to turn this over to Director Carissimo.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. I guess the chairman has left the room.
He'll be right back. He'll be right back.
And Gaming Commission members, as Jill indicated, my name is John Carissimo, and I'm the director of the Catch Institute. And I'd like to thank the commission and Director Lacey for inviting us here to do this presentation. And we will be brief. So, the Catch Institute was conceived by Bristol Community College President Dr. John Sprague to house the hospitality programs at the college, to allow for more cohesion among the programs and to achieve greater efficiency and economy. The impetus, obviously, for doing this was the approval by the state legislature of the Commonwealth providing 3 destination casinos and the slot parlor. Also that, you went a little too quick, Billy. Just go back a second. The emblem that you see up there was designed in-house by our communications department, and CATCH, as Jill indicated, stands for Culinary Arts, Tourism, Casino, and Hospitality. To achieve this, the existing Culinary Arts program was moved to Division 3, which is Dean Barati's division, and the following organization was created. The Institute staff, under the direction of Dean William Barati, includes myself, a coordinator for hospitality and tourism, and one for the casino program. Also, the college continued its commitment to the program by hiring a full-time instructor to teach in the hospitality courses and also to be an advisor to the Catch students in the hospitality program. Additionally, the Institute will employ adjunct instructors who are specialists in their area in the various different gaming courses. The Catch Institute was created to include the Culinary Arts, Tourism, Casino, and Hospitality programs. The Culinary Arts program has existed at Bristol for the past 30 years, and Tourism, Casino, and Hospitality have existed in various formats for the past 8 years. The culinary program was maintained and used as the model for the Catch Institute. By that I mean the Catch Institute students would be moved through their program in a cohort model so that they would be able to project out their schedules, when they would be taking classes, and how long they'd be involved in the program. I did this in order to allow them to especially work the program in within their work schedules if students wanted to continue working while they were taking the program. The other programs were all retired and archived, and a new degree was proposed to accommodate them. The Associate of Applied Science and Hospitality Management, with concentrations in tourism management, food service management, hotel management, and casino management, was proposed. As you can see, Bristol took the degree approach to addressing the need for these workers. The degree was worked on for the past year and a half and included a mix of courses which have existed at the college and in various programs, and new ones were created to accomplish the aims of the degree. The degree was subjected to the vetting process of the Division Curriculum Committee and also the college-wide Curriculum Committee. Along each step of the way, various suggestions were made and included within the proposal. Finally, with the approvals in place, the degree was submitted to the Board of Higher Ed for its review and approval. Again, through a thorough vetting process, the degree was approved. After appearing before the Board of Higher Education Academic Subcommittee and finally the Board of Higher Education on December 8, 2015, the board granted its approval. So actually, we really could not begin moving on this until we had the official approval of the Board of Higher Ed. It's difficult to advertise a program when you don't have the official approval of the approving body. The Associate of Applied Science and Hospitality Management is an academic career program, and I really want to stress the academicness of it. Within each of the courses, including the practical course, there are a lot of academic components to make it worthy of the Associate of Applied Science degree. The goal of the program is to both educate the students and train them to become both educated and trained workers in the hospitality industry. And the reason we began the degree so far out was the typical student takes 2.5 to 3 years to complete just about any degree program at Bristol Community College, and I'm sure the numbers hold for the community colleges across the Commonwealth. So our thought was, when we began this process, that if students were to begin their degree program, they would be ready pretty much when the ribbons were being cut in the various hotels. As you're well aware, we still do not have a licensee in Region C. So before we can begin working with anyone, we have to have somebody specifically named in our area to work with. The academic component is addressed by inclusion of pure academic courses, including courses such as English, history, science, and others. These courses are taken mainly in the first and second semesters before the student decides on his or her major course of study. To assist the student in deciding on a major, the student also takes introductory courses in casino operations, tourism, and hospitality food service. Most of the students are leaning towards some such major when they come into the program. But of course, many of them are not. They just know they're interested in the hospitality program, and as long as they're interested, excuse me, within the 4 areas that we're offering, then they're good for the program. As this is the Gaming Commission, obviously, and not the Hospitality Commission, I would like to focus on the gaming courses. As you can see, there are 4 academic gaming courses. Hospitality 140, Introduction to Casino Operations, which all hospitality students take, and all the rest of the courses are mandatory courses for casino majors. The courses include Hospitality 140, which is an introduction to casino operations. And this talks about a history of the gaming industry, basics of casino management, and gaming psychology and ethics. There's Hospitality 141, Casino Loss Prevention. This course is designed to provide students with a working knowledge of how multiple disciplines, casino departments, and government agencies ensure the protection of the casino customer and the casino's assets. Hospitality 142, Gaming and Social Policy, provides students the knowledge of the effects of gaming on a community. And Hospitality 150, the Introduction to Casino Games, will introduce the student to the various different casino games that will be offered within the program. The previous 3 courses were each 3 credits, which were 45 hours apiece, and the Introduction to Casino Games is a 2-credit course for 30 hours. Finally, in the 4th semester, the student will have the opportunity to select 2 of the 4 dealing games. We will offer dealing games in poker, blackjack, roulette, or craps. These courses will be offered in the newly created Casino Lab, which is being built at the newly created Bristol Community College Taunton Center in the Galleria Mall. The lab will contain regulation craps and roulette table, 4 blackjack tables, and 2 poker tables. And these will be staffed by qualified individuals as the need arises for the various different games. The gaming courses are a combination of academic work and, of course, practical work. The intent of these courses is to provide the student with a sufficient background and skill level to obtain a job as a dealer in a casino. The courses, each coupled with the 45-hour Hospitality 140 Introduction to Casinos and 30-hour Hospitality 150 Introduction to Casino Games, will provide the student with between 171 and 235 hours of education and training for each of the games. The poker, blackjack, and roulette courses are currently planned to be offered on 4 consecutive days a week for 6 weeks, and 4 days a week for 6 weeks, and 8 hours a day for 2 weeks for craps. What I've had to do, obviously, is attempt to keep that within a regulation semester in the college. The current plan is to use the lab whenever credit courses are not being offered to offer non-credit training and recreational dealing courses. In order to promote the program, the college is planning a major promotional campaign, including the following. Our communication department is putting the finishing touches on a view piece, which will include information about all the programs and the courses in the Catch Institute. The view piece will include a page to explain the Catch Institute. Notice a good shot of the Braga Bridge there. And also discuss the hospitality programs and its options. That obviously was a purchased slide, not the slide that we're building. In addition to the view piece, the following will be utilized. We'll be using Pandora and Twitter, which will employ Instagrams to cell phones and spots on Pandora users. Additionally, we will run approximately 512 commercials on various Comcast TV programs, and these will take place over a 6 to 8 week period beginning mid-March through April. Obviously, our needs are a little bit more intense. We need to have people in the seats for the September semester if they're going to follow this through on a 4 to 5 semester plan. Also, they're creating a poster with tear-offs to go to all the area high schools. This effort by Bristol and its investment so far in this initiative shows that the college is committed to the success of this program and is determined to be a leader in the region of hospitality education. We are also in the process of putting together the finishing touches, actually, by completing the syllabi, the application to be a gaming school, which will be coming to the commission, my hopes are by the end of next month, so that the commission will have the opportunity to vet our license application. Just to answer one question that you posed previously, we have been in touch with the Mashpees. We had a general meeting, excuse me, at the college. Year ago it is, okay. So we had a meeting at the college with the tribe about a year ago, and we discussed the various opportunities and things that Bristol Community College would be able to offer. And of course, I'm sure you realize that the placement of the new casino lab is at the Galleria Mall, which is directly across the street from the land and trust that the Mashpees hold. And I'd like to let Paul take a few minutes, Paul, I was told briefly, about what's happening with regard to the non-credit with the Mashpees at the moment. Paul?
Sure. So what we did in follow-up to the meetings last spring is we collaborated with Community College on Cape Cod and the Mashpee Wampanoag Tribal Nation at their Mashpee Government Center. And we've secured, first of all, we did a needs survey for them, because as you recall, in their staffing plans for the casino, they want to give priority to tribal members and then Native Americans in general as a first whack. So we've been working with the tribe now in Mashpee, not so much on the gaming stuff, but on what you might call nation building, kind of a bad pun in this case. But their growth of government has been quite substantial. You know, a year ago they had fewer than 50 people. They're about 125 right now. So recently we secured some funding from the Workforce Training Fund to do some upgrading and business work right at the tribal nation that focuses on customer service, dealing with the public, office and management skills, communication, leadership development. Beyond that, beyond the specific work with the Wampanoags, though, and working with the Catch team, the Workforce Institute, which is within my group, the non-credit group, has been offering hospitality training and customer service training now for several years. Like our colleagues in Holyoke and Springfield, we have been delivering stuff that's on-site. And then the last thought would be that we collaborated to do at least tips training for the Plain Ridge project.
Questions?
Yeah, can I follow up on that? Director Carismo, you were describing the college's program as a degree-focused program.
Yes.
In the earlier presentation, the focus was on a vocational, if I understand it right, a vocational level attention certificate. Is that what you're describing? I'm not sure if I've got your name right. But
Yeah, Paul Vigen.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Vigen.
Right. So my division deals with the non-credit academic offerings, so that, as the chef was and the director was mentioning earlier, to the extent an individual doesn't want to get into the full associate's degree track, then we'll have a pathway through the non-credit division that will enable them to take and focus more specifically on areas of gaming in which they want to concentrate. So we offer adult basic education. We offer English as a second language as support curricula to the technical training, and then we weave in the workforce training specific to the catch model, but without such an academic focus in terms of they don't need to take the history, they don't need to take the math, they will not get an associate's degree. However, they will earn the credentials, the Safe Serve credentials, the OSHA credentials, and any of the industry-recognized gaming credentials that are embedded into the Catch Institute. Ultimately, we want to use our stuff as a feeder program to their stuff on the longer range. So we will have both ends of that spectrum. So those students who are interested in an associate degree will enroll in the full Catch program. Those students who are less inclined to do the full degree program initially will have the opportunity for non-credit and ultimately credit-based workforce stuff, but in a contracted model.
And is that done under the auspices of BCC?
Yes, I work as the vice president for Bristol Community College as well.
I see. Okay.
So just to finish up on Commissioner Lloyd Cameron, whatever his name is.
McDonald's. I'm the new guy here. Very few people know me yet.
So you will be offering certificates or certificate-like programs, pretty much the whole same spectrum as Holyoke and Springfield are.
Right, we try to work collaboratively with the other 6 community colleges that are closest to the points of contact. So Holyoke and Springfield, Bunker Hill, and
RCC.
North Shore. And then in our case, Massasoit
Right.
and
Okay,
ourselves.
great.
And also, just to follow up on that, in the works, there is a certificate for slot technician repair and a certificate for surveillance. And those are obviously on hold until we get this thing going, and because they also take a much shorter span of time.
Did you also avail yourselves of the Atlantic Cape academic?
No, we have not, and I don't believe anyone has yet, because as far as I know, no one has laid out the $225,000 to take a peek at that curriculum.
Oh, I got the impression that Holyoke and Springfield either had it or.
It was, excuse me, but it was, yeah, it was my understanding that as soon as the 3 regions, the casinos for the 3 regions was established, then that $210,000 for the Atlantic Cape program would be share amongst the 3 lead colleges, so it'd be $70,000 per college. Since Region C yet hasn't determined who's going to get that license, then it's my understanding that the Atlantic Cape is still in abeyance.
Atlantic.
Yeah.
I had a question. You briefly mentioned, was it a gaming lab in the Independence Mall?
No, at the Galleria.
I'm
Mall.
sorry, the Galleria Mall.
It's-
Right across, I know where it is. I've been there. So could you just tell me a little more about that?
Sure, that will be the lab that we're going to use, that we will run the dealing courses in for blackjack, poker, casino, and craps. When a gaming school went out of business, how many years ago? 5?
Well, no, it was a couple of years ago.
A couple of years ago, they donated their equipment to BCC, because at that time, we had a couple of gaming courses, nothing to the extent that we are beginning now. So all of that equipment was bubble wrapped and put into storage. So now that the program has come along and we're moving into the Galleria Mall at the Taunton site, then they've carved out an area for the gaming lab, which will be part of the degree program, and also will be used more extensively, I'm assuming, for non-credit training also.
Yes. That will also include the surveillance lab, Chef?
The surveillance lab will be adjacent to it, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Any other questions?
This is somewhat lighthearted, but where do you get your instructors for craps and
Right now,
poker?
we're fortunate enough to have one adjunct instructor who has been with Bristol Community College. How many years, Bill?
38 years.
38 years, and he was a former dealer at Foxwoods. And he's kept, matter of fact, he's probably watching this show right now, live streaming, because he watches every week. So he has been our resource insofar as the gaming courses, and he will be one of our instructors. We have a few applications on the desk, and then obviously we'll have to advertise. And I've also been in connection with Twin River to see if some of their people who are doing their training for them would be willing to work at Bristol, and I've gotten a positive response from that so far. So obviously, there are very, not a lot of people out there competent to train dealers, so we have to search for them.
And I'll point out from the academic side, we generally require individuals to have a master's degree or a PhD in their particular discipline. There tends not to be people with master's degree in casino gaming. So that's a challenge, but we also have a number of primarily vocational areas or vocational disciplines where we use alternate training, experience, or some other type of qualification to as an alternative to the degree. So we do have a system in place for dealing with situations like this.
Jill, I hadn't thought about this before, but when we open the other facilities, there will be a pretty big demand for game sense advisors. And it might be worth talking with Mark and Marlene, as well as the community colleges, about whether a responsible gaming certificate, we've got all these other certificates, but in responsible gaming, a short, concise training program of that same kind of dimension that was training people to be game sense advisors. We're going to be hiring dozens of them at a minimum. And it would be great from our standpoint, or from the Council on Problem Gambling standpoint, if they had a pool of people who had been trained in that kind of work. And there'd probably be other applications for it as well.
I'll follow up with Director Vanderlinden. Thank you.
Great.
And I'd like to,
One final question. We got to get Paul a BCC tie. Kind of look a little out of.
I was going to bring ties and scarves, but I was told there was a prohibition against.
Yeah, we can't have one, but Paul needs one.
Paul needs one.
Yes.
Yeah.
well, I'd like to thank our guests from Bristol Community College for their update.
Thanks.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thanks very much.
Very
Very
much.
exciting.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank, in addition to thanking them, I'd like to call up our next guests.
Jill, before you finish that, before you move to that, having the updates like this is really helpful. It's interesting and positive for one thing, but it also helps us see, reassures me at least, that some of these benchmarks are actually being made, and I'm thrilled to see the progress that's happening. But I think it will help everybody, including them, if they know that every 90 days or whatever,
Yeah.
a report is in order. So keep this up. This is really great.
Steve Gale's asking for a break.
Sure. Yeah. And before we go next, we'll take a 5-minute break.
Okay, great.
Reconvening meeting 180, and we are back to Director Griffin.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. In order to better illustrate the early economic development success of the gaming industry in Massachusetts, I have invited several companies to highlight examples of the vendor relationships with Plainridge Park casinos and let them tell you in their own words the impact of expanded gaming in the Commonwealth. Additionally, following their remarks, I'll introduce them in a second. Following their remarks, Corrine Reynolds from the Office of Workforce Supplier and Diversity Development and Director Paul Connolly from our licensing division will present highlights from a survey of Massachusetts vendors of Plainridge Park Casino. But first, for a little context, as of February 15th, Plainridge Park Casino contracted with a total of 434 vendors, spending a total of $19.4 million, with an additional $7.67 million in intercompany transfers to national. Of that 210.
What does that mean? What does that mean? Is that money that's spent in here or not?
No, that's money that's spent
Okay.
with National.
Got it.
So
Oh, contract.
I just had to exclude that.
Okay.
And I was advised by our CFO I should include that.
Okay.
Of that, 210 of those vendors were Massachusetts vendors with a spend totaling about $12.5 million. 4.6% of Plain Ridge Park contracts went to minority, women, and veteran business enterprise, totaling about $850,000. I've invited a few vendors here today, just as examples. And sitting to my right is Gary Gomes, who's the owner of Logistico LLC. Logistico is a minority business enterprise located in Webster that specializes in third-party procurement. They locate hard-to-find items that Plain Ridge Park Casino is unable to source. And before I turn it over, I should acknowledge that Eli Heward from Plain Ridge Park Casino is here as well. He's the director of purchasing.
Great.
So Gary?
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Morning.
Good afternoon.
It's good afternoon. My name's Gary Gomes. I'm the owner of Logistico LLC. We're a small, disadvantaged, minority-owned business located in Central Mass, in Webster, Massachusetts, where we have a warehouse where we perform our service. We're a logistics company, like the name suggests. We're 7 years old. We're located again in Webster, which is a high unemployment district. It's designated by the federal government as a hub zone area, and we're a hub zone certified company. 90% of our business, or the majority of our business, is with the federal government. So we do a lot of projects with the federal government when they have a large project that needs a long list of equipment from various vendors that they need to get overseas somewhere. They'll come to us, they'll give us a list of equipment, we'll go procure all the equipment, we'll bring it into our warehouse, we'll store it until the last piece gets there, we'll pack it all up, and we'll get it, we'll deliver it overseas, wherever it needs to go by the certain time frame it needs to get there. So, for example, currently, we do a lot with the government on the war on drugs. So we're supplying them with a lot of drug testing lab equipment. A lot of that is going over to West Africa, the West African nations, where they're taking all this equipment, setting up drug testing labs, and we also supplied them with patrol boats for interdiction of the drugs, and communication towers and radios. Equipment that helps them fight the war on drugs. We're also currently supplying the Afghan Customs Department, it's through the DCA, through the State Department actually, with a drug testing lab at the Kabul airport. So we're actually shipping that today. It's about $1.2 million of equipment, of drug testing equipment to test for drugs at the airport. Also the chemicals for these labs. Also, canine training for drug sniffing dogs. We provide the equipment. We've got 6 projects going on in Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan to ship equipment over there to train their drug officers on the canine training dogs. Currently, we're working on a project with USAID to provide protective suits for Nigeria for the avian flu, for the bird flu. So they're looking for, I think it's 5,000 protective suits and aprons and goggles and 75,000 pairs of gloves, things like that. So those are the types of projects that we typically work on. We did a lot to support the troops during the war effort also. What we do for Plain Ridge is when they are looking for some equipment that may be hard to find, they'll come to us, they'll ask us to do the homework, go find different sources for the equipment within the time frame that they may need it. We'll do all the work to go out, find out where we can get this, whatever they're looking for, present them with options, and then
hopefully they'll end up buying it from us. So like one example of that is they came to us, they needed a specific size and type of souvenir display case for Flutie's Restaurant. So it had to be a specific size, specific height, specific type. So we went out and they wanted it for a specific time frame also. So we had to go out, we did all the homework to try and find out where we could get a specific type of display case and who had it in stock, and then we gave them different options. They ordered one from us. We ordered it. We tracked the delivery. We made sure that it got there on time so they could have it by, I think it might have been the opening or something like that. So that's what we do with Plain Ridge. The impact that it's had for us is working with the federal government is it's very project-oriented. It's kind of up and down depending on what projects you have. It's been able to, working with Plain Ridge has been able to stabilize our workforce a little bit more than we normally are, and it's been able for me as an owner to increase the number of hours that I can give to my workers, which is important based on where we're located in a high unemployment area. So we've been able to increase the hours to our workers, and more importantly for my business, I have a need to diversify from the federal government because it's so project-oriented. After the war effort, we had a couple of tough years, but now we're back on our feet and helping the government fight the war on drugs. But it's important for me to diversify so I don't have those ups and downs. And working with Plain Ridge allows us not only to diversify with them in that specific property, but they're in the process of introducing us to all the other P&G properties. And every property could use the service that we provide.
Great.
They've told us that, and we believe that. So it's not only working with Plain Ridge, it's working with the other P&G properties, and then as the other casinos come on board, I really believe that they could use this service also. So, we could work with them, and then we could get introduced to their sister properties, so on and so on. So it's really about diversifying our business, keeping people busy, and hopefully growing the business.
Great. How do you characterize the work you're in? I know it's logistics, but it sounds a little more nuanced than that.
Well, it's more procurement. It's procurement. We call it procurement and kitting. We do a lot of kitting projects also for the government. We've done rope and rescue kits for the National Guard. We do personal protection equipment kits for the U.S. Army, with helmets, ballistic vests, tactical gloves, and goggles. We did about 30,000 custom manufactured antenna mast kits for the U.S. Army, which is a kit about the size of this table with all custom manufactured pieces in there. And you put these aluminum poles together, and it goes up about 30 feet with guy wires down to hold it in place. And at the top, they put a little RF dish, a mini computer, and an antenna. And those 30,000 kits during the war, they went out with the troops, and where there was no way to communicate back to the base, they would set these up every, couple miles or 5 miles, depending on the terrain, so they could communicate back. So it's more procurement and kitting and shipping, warehousing, that type of thing.
Interesting. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Next up, we have Wendy Weber, owner, and Dennis Reardon, Regional Sales Manager of Kittredge Food Service Equipment and Supplies. Kittredge Food Service is a certified woman business enterprise food service equipment and supply distributor located in Agawam, Massachusetts.
Hi.
Hi. Welcome.
Sounds funny
Welcome.
to hear my voice like that. So I'm the president of Kittredge Equipment Company. The business was founded back in 1921 by my husband's grandfather, Max Kittredge. And it's been in the family since then. My husband he worked for a different family business, and then when that business was sold, he decided that he liked the business, but he didn't want to work with his uncles. So he bought them out, and then it became part of our family business. I have 4 children. None of them are working in the business right now. They've all graduated college and are working in different industries. And I hope that they will come back, at least 1, 2, or 3. I know my oldest daughter will stay in New York City. So we are a full-service restaurant equipment dealer dealing with restaurants as well as hospitality, healthcare, and the casino industry. Our business kind of fluctuates with what's going on. We do a lot of large projects, and then we do a lot of smaller mom-and-pop restaurants. And again, we've seen fluctuations where we haven't had many big projects going on, and the casinos have really given us the advantage now because we're building relationships, and the relationships go on to build more relationships, and we are very happy to be one of the suppliers to the casinos. In 2011, we became a WBE, and that was right after my husband passed away. And we employ 80 full-time employees. We have a store in Agawam, Mass., another one in Williston, Vermont, right outside of Burlington. And we, 2 or 3 years ago, bought another small family-owned business in Bow, New Hampshire. So we really service all of New England. Due to not only the casino business, but some other large accounts that we've gotten, we've just recently purchased a new warehouse. We've purchased new trucks and are in the process of hiring new people to be able to carry on and, provide the services that we like to provide. And Dennis will explain more of our relationship with Penn Gaming.
Thanks, Wendy. So back in early 2014, myself, my sales staff started researching the opportunities that we would have within the casino industry. We attended several meet and greet events throughout the Commonwealth. At the DCU Center, for example, where we met Penn Gaming and Patrick Scargill, who was the director of purchasing. Following our initial meeting, we began the process of quoting and helping Plainridge to outfit their back-of-the-house operations as well as all the front-of-the-house operations. As Wendy said, we're a full-service dealer, so we sell everything from heavy-duty cooking equipment to the small knick-knacky piece of flatware that you'll see on top of the table. The sales for us totaled approximately $430,000 in fiscal 2015. The work we did locally also afforded us the opportunity to do work with them on a national level. We did a video presentation for Patrick that he took to one of his conferences that he presented to the rest of his purchasing team nationally. Those sales this year for us have gone over the $50,000 mark, something that we probably never would have been able to attain previously without the relationship that we were able to build with them. We also recently completed a project in Springfield, Massachusetts for an MGM. This project was the relocation of the Springfield Rescue Mission. It was a $260,000 kitchen project that we did. And for those of you who don't know, the Rescue Mission serves the homeless population in Springfield. So they purchased a building, I'm sure Bruce knows, the Orr Cadillac building that they moved over and renovated for the new Rescue Mission. We're excited about the opportunities that we're given with all this new business coming in. And we're growing, as Wendy said. So thanks for inviting us.
Great.
It's great news.
What are
Great stories.
If you're comfortable saying it, what are the revenues of the company?
This year we were about $41 million. We're targeting 50.5
Great.
next year.
That's terrific. Wendy keeps your feet to the fire.
Yes.
I have a question for our guests, and I know Corinne is going to get to this in a little bit.
We have one more business.
Oh, one
Do you
more
mind
guest.
if
Okay.
we,
Yes.
Marianne Campesano is owner of Mac Graphics. Mac Graphics is a small certified woman business enterprise, a print and marketing company located in Mansfield. And she'll describe the work that she's done for Plainridge Park Casino and her specialty. Thank you.
Good afternoon,
afternoon.
everybody. Thank you, Commissioner Crosby and the board for having me here today. I'm Mary Ann Camposano, principal of Mac Graphics. We're a virtual agency located in Mansfield that specializes in providing, excuse me, Massachusetts companies with high-quality printing services, promotional items, and marketing materials. We're local, we're resourceful, we have wonderful clients. We're certified, as you said, as a woman-owned business, and we had obtained our non-vendor gaming license in 2015. As a direct result of that, we were able to become a partner to Plain Ridge Park Casino from pre-opening through today, and that's been a terrific benefit to us and to all our partners in the area. Some of the products we've done for Plain Ridge Park Casino include elevator wraps, wall graphics, printed invitations, boulevard banners, marketing collateral, and we produced a 25-foot full-color wall mural for local football legend Doug Flutie's restaurant. For that, we had to be pretty resourceful. For example, we used our local connections to find out who to contact to get approval for the photograph. Then we obtained the necessary permissions to print it, and we installed it under a tight deadline, just in time for Veterans Day. It's our job to find a way to produce whatever it is that our clients need. And excuse my voice, obviously I have a cold. Plain Ridge has been a major client of Mac Graphics since May, but in terms of percentage of our business, it's difficult to quantify. However, I can say that we saw a 100% increase getting ready for the opening for Plain Ridge. Once things settled down, our relationship continued, and I'm happy to say that Plain Ridge remains one of our major clients to this day. The impact that Plain Ridge represents is fluid. The number changes monthly depending on what they have going on. But companies like Sign Design in Brockton, Central Print Source in Norwell, there are a couple of the local vendors that have benefited from my relationship with Plain Ridge, in addition to about 19 other vendors that I use on a regular basis. For each project, I partner with the printer, vendor, and creative team that's the best fit for my client's budget, schedule, and requirements. At Mac Graphics, we love what we do. We take great pride in making our clients look good, and that's when we know we've done our job well. Thank you for the opportunity today. I want to say that I've enjoyed working with Plain Ridge, and I'm looking forward to new adventures with them on a continuing basis. I also want to just say quickly that I really appreciate the support that I got from the Mass Gaming Commission, especially Bill Curtis, Mary Ann Bratton Davies for their encouragement, excuse me, their encouragement to get my license.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I was going to ask about that. Obviously, a new experience having to get a license to be a vendor, correct?
Yes.
And it sounds like the team assisted you through the process?
They were very, very supportive. I actually hesitated to get my license. I wasn't sure that I, quite frankly, had the bandwidth at that time to spend the time and to go through the process. And as I said, Bill Curtis was very encouraging, and everybody here, helped me right through the process. They've been very professional, very knowledgeable, and I would do it again.
Good. That's great.
That was going to be my question, and I have it of the other guests that we have here. We're required to do an investigation and a licensing process by statute and by regulation. We're always looking, though, at how to fine-tune, that process if we can. And I know Corinne is going to get to some of the result of the surveys, but if anybody's interested, Mr. Gomes, Ms. Weber, how would you characterize opportunities for us to fine-tune our process, the decision-making that a small business owner goes through in terms of, do I spend time going through that process because of bandwidth or whatever else when you face that prospect of licensure?
So for me personally, I think I started the process at the end of 2014, and I worked directly with Bill Curtis, and he was just great. He kind of handheld me at the beginning when I didn't really know the answers, what I was doing, and whenever I had a question, I would give him a call or drop him an email, and he'd get right back to me, call me back or get back to me. So for me personally, I would say the process was pretty pretty painless. It really was. I mean, it was just, you have to fill out paperwork, but you have to fill out paperwork for, I'm used to filling out paperwork. I would
Well, you
work
deal with the federal government.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, personally, I think, you know, I worked directly with Bill. I really didn't work with too many other people, but, you know, very responsive, answered all my questions. An email went out, he'd get back to me that day. A phone call went out, he'd get back to me that day. So for me, it was very, very good.
Yeah,
Any thoughts,
and
Ms.
for
Weber?
us as well, you know, our.
Pull the
our
mic, pull the mic over.
The WBE certification took about 9 months with many, many folders. So this isn't quite as entailed, but I think we're struggling with a few things. I think the IRS changed a couple forms on us, so we have to redo a couple things. But yeah, it's a long process and it's worth it, you know. And then it makes you also take a look at everything that's going on in your business. So in a way, it's a little eye-opening.
Interesting.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is Mac Graphics expecting to talk to the other casino companies as well?
Mac Graphics has been speaking to MGM, definitely.
Good.
And unfortunately, because of the way I was feeling, I missed the meeting up at Everett, I think it was last week. But yes,
Dope.
it's, you know, one of the things that I really, really think is important is that Mac Graphics is very, very small, but we have what I call a posse or a team of wonderful people and vendors that, you know, I couldn't do my work without them. And when I started the company, I said the only way that this is going to be successful is to have a level of trust with my vendors, with my clients, and quite frankly, with my contractors and my design team. And it's been really, really fun and exciting to grow and to have the opportunity to expand our repertoire and to do things that we might not have had a chance to do if this hadn't come along. So it's fun, it's great, and as I said, we love our work.
That's great.
Well, you all three are prime targets for the other licensees, and you've already been licensed. And they really committed to all the promises that they've made on minority and women-owned businesses. So all you have to do is make that introduction or raise your hand, and as I'm sure you will. So
Thank you.
thank you.
And do
Thank
good
you
work.
very much.
Yes,
Great
continue
work.
the good work that you do.
Thanks very much for coming in. We
Thanks for
really
coming in.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eli.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Just, yeah, shoot me an email.
Thank you very much.
And I'll ask Corinne Reynolds and my colleague Paul Connolly to join me up here. And next, I'd like to just introduce a joint project that the Department of Workforce Supplier and Diversity had worked on with our licensing department. And the goal was to get a baseline or a sample of the impact of expanded gaming in Massachusetts, to identify potential technical assistance needs of the vendors, and to gain insight in the licensing process from a business perspective. So I'm going to turn over the mic to Corinne Reynolds, who as an intern with the Mass Gaming Commission managed this project.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
So the Plainridge Park Casino, Massachusetts-based vendor survey, its goal was to obtain a baseline measurement of the impact on local business due to casino gaming, as well as identify technical assistance needs of our vendors. We also looked at this as an opportunity for MGC to gain insight on our licensing process from a vendor's perspective.
Where is the,
It's not. Oh, here it is. Okay. The The survey was created with collaboration of the following departments here at MGC: the Workforce Supply and Diversity Development Department, the Department of Licensing, and the Department of Research and Responsible Gaming, with some help from Commissioner Stebbins as well. The survey was developed based on similar surveys from city and state economic development institutions, as well as a brainstorming session here with MGC staff members. The survey was refined and submitted to our research consultants at UMass Amherst for feedback as well. Once the survey was finalized, it was sent via SurveyMonkey to a list of Massachusetts-based businesses working as vendors with Plainridge Park Casino. This list was provided by Massachusetts Gaming Commission's licensing department, and the survey was distributed in early October. Vendor participation in the survey was voluntary and anonymous to promote open and honest responses. After about a month lapsed, vendors were sent a reminder to participate in the survey, and then participation ended in late November. 94 Massachusetts-based vendors were identified, and the survey was sent out to these vendors. And of the 94 vendors we contacted, 28 chose to participate, providing a total survey return rate of approximately 30%. This percentage being above the 25% average of emailed surveys, a statistic reported by SurveyMonkey. Although the survey was anonymous, we were able to capture some information about the participants. About 32% of survey completers identified themselves as president or CEO or the owner of the participating businesses. And the second largest group participating were roles in finance, so CFO and VP of finance. Of these companies, 75% have been in business for 20 or more years, with the majority of these businesses being in the food and beverage industry. Although the average number of employees was about 60, several businesses had fewer than 20 employees. So the first set of results I'll summarize will be the feedback we obtained about our vendor registration process. In the vendor registration selection of this survey, we were given both multiple choice questions and open response questions. And we have separated this information into three takeaways: strengths, challenges, and feedback and evaluation. So some strengths reported by participants highlighted our licensing staff and how accessible and helpful they were, which we all saw earlier. So some of the comments were the staff at MGC were all helpful and easy to work with. The contact at the Mass Gaming Commission was available to help me anytime we had a question and replied to emails or phone calls quickly. Our strengths also included finding information on the MGC website. Challenges expressed by survey participants focused on the fingerprinting process, as well as some challenges came up involving understanding what outside documents were needed to be provided to us during the registration process, and also acquiring those documents. The survey participants provided us with some great feedback. This feedback was strongly positive and constructive, and described that the vendor registration process was a bit lengthy, but some adjectives were straightforward, smooth, and painless as a process as a whole. And then Paul's going to talk more on that.
Sure, I just wanted to speak a little bit about what we did. We obviously, the survey, at least from my perspective, was highly successful, 30% return rate, multiple choice and free form answers. What I found interesting, just as a note, was more vendors answered the free form answer than they did the multiple choice. I know myself, when I'm taking a survey, if I can't just click A, B, or C, I normally skip the question. But to me, what that said was that our vendors have been thinking a lot about the process, and the feedback they provided was both strongly positive, as Corinne said, mentioned and was mentioned earlier, strength of the team, and where it was critical, it was highly helpful. You know, people didn't just blast the process, but rather offered specific areas like the length of the process or fingerprinting or third-party kind of services such as certificate of good standing or the IRS forms, where there were challenges. The good news I took from that was those were all areas we had identified ourselves and have been working on trying to streamline. Some specific feedback and comments that we got from vendors about how to improve the process were one, kind of fillable forms. As it was, most of the work was done on paper. We had, at the same time as they were suggesting this, created fillable PDFs and put those online, and that's actually been a huge success, saved a lot of time. Vendor certificates, I'll admit I was a little bit surprised some folks wanted kind of that certificate saying they completed the process, which was nice because I think it reflects, it reflects how they view the process. I thought people were just happy kind of getting the okay, but we've implemented certificates and also didn't quite realize that those have an additional benefit where folks can use that. They may not want, they may want something a little bit more generic to be able to show people to say, hey, look, I'm licensed or registered as a vendor here. And thirdly, the certificate of good standing is one that we are working actively with the Department of Revenue to figure out ways to both streamline that process as well as increase some of the transparency on the information that's returned on it. So again, part of the agency-wide self-evaluation and feedback process that every part of the organization is going through after opening Plainridge, this was a critical part of that for us. It validated, in my opinion, a lot of what we already knew about our challenges and things we're trying to address, but also was really encouraging, to be honest, to me, although I didn't need it, but to the team to hear the great feedback. It's oftentimes you don't have those opportunities. You hear about kind of the issues, you don't hear about the positives, and this was a great opportunity in an anonymous fashion and through these interviews that we just heard earlier. To really reinforce that we have an excellent, and I'm really happy with the quality of the team that I get to work with every day. So we're moving forward. I think we'll be updating you on certificate of good standing issues and things like that, and that'll be part of a larger discussion that we have in terms of the process itself as we revisit the licensing regulations and moving forward.
Paul, what's the issue with the fingerprinting? Is it people just don't want to be fingerprinted, or is it the way that the process is executed?
So I think anywhere you have a process that requires, a person to appear, and it's a challenge in terms of scheduling. I think there are folks, to be honest with you, I think there's some discomfort in doing it. It's just, for most people, they've never gone through the process. And it does, even though it's not for any, criminal purpose, it's obviously something that can seem a little bit disconcerting. That being said, I think from what we have heard, we obviously offer the opportunity for folks to come in here and do it, which has worked out. Every vendor that is getting fingerprinted, we send them the cards, the appropriate cards, because that's obviously very important. And fortunately, Massachusetts local police departments provide that service, and we'll take those cards. Other states, it's not always the case, but we are lucky here. Once we've kind of gotten people educated, given them the right materials, things seem to work well. But I think, to be honest with you, the biggest challenge is these are all busy people. It's taking the time to actually go do it, which I think is probably, in my understanding and what I've heard, the biggest challenge, in addition to just the fundamental ick factor, maybe, of inking your fingers. But you get the benefit if you come here, there's no ink. So.
Paul, can't we, yes, it's an issue, but now that we have a physical presence at Plainridge, I'm assuming all of these vendors are going in and at some point meeting with Eli or meeting with somebody from the team that, Eli or somebody at Plainridge should be able to just direct them over to our gaming unit and say, great resource, go get your, we're going to do business with you. Obviously, we don't want to waste our time with people who aren't going to wind up needing to be registered, but, is that something that we encourage Eli and the procurement team to suggest?
We have mentioned that, yeah, to several vendors that they can do it. Some of them, again, they're not right in the general area, so it may actually be more convenient for them to go to a local police department. But that is certainly an option that obviously all the employees take advantage of and is integrated as part of the other licensees. It will be the same opportunity will be at WIN and at MGM to have fingerprints taken there.
I'm curious, of the 28 participants, or for that matter, the 94, off the top of your head, do you know the breakdown between primaries and secondaries?
So my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think there are no primaries. Vast majority were registrants. I think there were a few secondary, to include Kittredge, and the representative from Kittredge had mentioned the IRS form, which is obviously part of that process. I don't know off the top of my head, I'm not sure of the numbers, but I just remember anecdotally it was the vast majority were registrants.
Of the ones that participated?
Correct.
Yes.
And they don't get fingerprinted?
Registrants do.
Oh, registrants do?
They do,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
Alrighty. Moving on to technical assistance. As you could see from the chart, that the largest technical assistance need was social media and marketing. And the second was finance technical assistance. And
Is this meaning technical assistance that they would like for their business?
Exactly.
Okay.
So,
Not for the application process, the licensing process.
sorry, I apologize. I should have explained that a little bit better. But with this information, we are able to connect these vendors with the proper technical assistance partners that we have here at MGC and kind of help them grow as vendors with MGC. So looking towards the future, survey participants were asked a series of multiple choice and open response questions, again, to capture a baseline economic insight on vendors at Plain Ridge Park Casino. And at the time of the survey, most survey participants reported that the revenue generated from their contract at Plain Ridge Park Casino amounted to a very small percentage. But with that being said, some reported it being 20% and even 50%. Also at the time of the survey, companies did not expand their business to become vendors to the casino, but 4 businesses reported that they were able to create new partnerships as a direct result of their business with the casino. And finally, to the graph, when asked to forecast their company's growth in the coming years, businesses are really optimistic about the number of customers and their sales and their profits growing in the next few years. So quick follow-up. After we received all the results from the survey, we met with the Department of Licensing and kind of went over the feedback we got. We met with Director Vanderlinden, Director of Research and Responsibility, and went over some feedback with him. And then we plan to connect our vendors with those technical assistant resources, review and revise the survey, and create a timeline for possible surveys in the future. And that's it, folks.
Did you do any follow-up when you sent out the Survey Monkey?
Mm-hmm.
Did you do anything to try to encourage support, participation?
We did. So around the month timeline of the survey, we sent it out again, another greeting message from us saying, hey, if you've taken the survey, thank you so much for your participation, but if you haven't, we strongly encourage you to do so. It's anonymous, and we love your feedback. So we did kind of solicit them towards the middle of the survey.
So you sent it out
participation
once,
period.
and then you had one follow-up?
Yes. And that goes again with kind of reviewing and revising how we went about the first baseline survey and how we could do better with future surveys.
Right. Good. Great. Anything else?
No, good results, good work, thank you.
I'd just be interested in, as you consider future activities like this, perhaps to think about who may we be missing. For example, vendors that may have been targeted by Penn or MGM or Wynn, who have not been licensed, were not licensed, or did not want to be licensed. You know what I mean? To try to get to challenges, if there are any, before we see them as licensed vendors. But that's food for thought for a future activity.
We'll circle back with you and get some feedback
You
for
know,
the
you know, talk to Penn if there's such population out there,
Yeah.
or if it's really just in the abstract.
No, that's interesting. Before we close, I'd just like to take a moment. Corinne Reynolds is winding down her time at Mass Gaming. Her last day is March 11th, and I just wanted to take the time to thank her for her service here, and she's been a wonderful help to me and to the commission. So she's going on to other things.
Thank you, Corinne.
And I just want to thank everyone for having me here. It's been a great almost year here, and I think I've grown, and Jill was such a great mentor to have. So I'm very blessed. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Corinne.
Corinne.
Thank you, Corinne.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think we can do a very short presentation Director Vandoen has,
Okay.
and then I'd suggest maybe taking a break after
Yeah.
that. Okay.
Okay, we'll be ready when Mark gets here.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I am here with Marlene Warner, who you're very familiar with. Marlene has been a steadfast advocate in many areas that we pay very close attention to, including the issues of looking at gambling disorders and problem gambling. March is National Problem Gambling Awareness Month. I think that there's a number of different activities that the Mass Council does that are far above and beyond the areas in which the council collaborates with the Gaming Commission. I think in honor of this month, I want to give you a briefing, or allow Marlene to give you a briefing on some of these very important activities. So with that, I'm just going to turn it over to Marlene.
Great. And I promise the briefing will be brief because I know everyone wants to get to lunch. So thank you again for the opportunity to talk with you during Problem Gambling Awareness Month. As I think you all know, it used to be a week, and it really started to grow in popularity across the United States and certainly here in Massachusetts, and so it became a month last year. And so we're doing a number of things, and I thought what might be useful is for you to hear, you hear about Game Sense all the time, but to hear a little bit more about what the council's doing and doing in partnership with others, some of our stakeholders and collaborators across our various mission areas. So with that, I'll start with advocacy, and I think one of the nice things is always to start with some stories. And so let me tell you about a gentleman whose name and age and some of the details I've changed, but who's actually currently in our office meeting with one of our staff members. Thomas, age 30, from Weston, spent 10 years in prison for drug trafficking. He initially got into drug trafficking due to his heroin problem, but it was prolonged due to needing money for his gambling addiction. He talks about a regular Monday night football that was once fun, and he used to spend the time watching the games with his dad, but that he got to the point where he would lose $40,000 on one game when he was not enjoying it and felt very caught up in the the racing behavior, the connection to the gambling more than to the game. During prison, he was in multiple MCI facilities. He did go to prison, like I said, due to his drug trafficking, and he's just ended his sentence at MCI Plymouth. It's there he met Scott Melissa, one of my staff members who's running a program called Square One, helping people who are in prison and getting out of prison with a gambling disorder. And he met Scott after he had heard about Square One. He had wrote Scott a letter and actually initially heard about this from another person he had met when he was at MCI Norfolk. And that prisoner actually spent the time after he had met Scott in Norfolk to write this gentleman a letter when he was at MCI Plymouth saying,
be on the lookout for Scott Melissa. This program is right up your alley. So while we have a hard time sometimes getting the message out, it's getting out there. Scott worked with this gentleman, Thomas, kind of through the various steps to him getting out of prison. And through advocacy and compassion and good capacity building, Scott was really able to connect Thomas to the right resources and support his gambling recovery from within the prison walls to the pre-release program to his efforts to secure a job on the outside. Only currently months out of prison, he's now managing a catering program for a major restaurant chain in the Boston area, is really on the right path. But the story doesn't end there. Square One's going to continue to support his recovery and advocate for him. His housing situation currently is not great. It's full of triggers, and we're trying to help him remedy that. And we're working with his family to make sure they also have the resources and understanding they need. Thomas has the will, and we're trying to provide him the way. And I think it's a nice foundation for us to think about some of the work that we are really trying to focus on in Massachusetts during Problem Gambling Awareness Month. Not only are there current resources available, but there's a lot of gaps, and we're trying to identify them and bring those to light specifically during March. So also under advocacy, we are certainly continuing to advocate for individuals through the legislature, through meetings with public policymakers, as well as really specifically advocating for budget resources to not just with the Public Health Trust Fund that is administered out of this entity, but also around the lottery dollars and the unclaimed prize winnings that go into the public health approach. In terms of public awareness, a lot of efforts are underway. We are seeing increasing needs for multilingual resources. We have some materials that are bilingual with English and Spanish, but certainly looking at some of our other needs in terms of Portuguese and Asian resources, and trying to get employees that can really outreach to those different populations. As you all know, we work very closely with your licensees in the state lottery, and we're trying to secure some additional connections with vendors. And so through the Mass Partnership on Responsible Gambling, that group is going to, is underway with a public media campaign where they're going to talk a little bit about the facts of responsible gambling in Massachusetts in a weekly slide, for lack of a better term. Basically, it's going to have one singular focus in terms of a statistic and going to be connected to a picture that represents responsible gambling and a press release that'll go out weekly throughout March. And we also, which I managed to leave in Mark's office, but we also worked collaboratively with the Mass State Lottery to do problem gambling awareness posters, and those are going up at point of sale, the POS, across the state, so be on the lookout for those. There's a really robust social media calendar, and oddly enough, there's something every single day that's going to go up on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter through Hootsuite. Is that what it's called? Hootsuite. Hootsuite. Sorry, I'm so not hip on this. So someone else will be doing it. But there's going to be staff devoted to sharing and retweeting not only what's happening here in Massachusetts, but also what's happening elsewhere. So we're really trying to bring more information in and connect people. Interestingly enough, again, I think I've said to this group, our helpline calls have, they're kind of steady at this point, but they're much lower than they were when I started the council 15 years ago. But the way people are getting information, I know is not a shocker to anyone, but it's amazing how much our website hits have increased, and also the connections we're making and the way people are reaching out through social media connections. So these are really becoming very key pieces of outreach for us. A little bit about GameSense as it relates to public awareness. One of the things that's important is that we know that employees in general have higher rates of gambling disorder when they work on site at a casino. And so one of the pieces we want to do is use the BBGS, which is a 3-question screening tool that has come out of the Harvard Medical School's Division on Addictions, and make sure that we are administering that with some other type of interesting giveaway to all the staff at PBC, just to keep their awareness raised and make sure they're aware of what's going on, both with themselves and patrons. A big focus.
Excuse me, Marlene, did you say that there is a pattern of greater problem gambling among casino employees?
Yes. That's a pretty well-documented fact at this point in the field. And
is that something that they come to the employment with, or is it something that they develop during the course of their employment?
It's a good question. I don't know that we've completely tease that out, but I think that one of the things that folks will talk about anecdotally anyway is that, you know, if you're a dealer or you are seeing it all the time, you think you're smarter than everyone else, right? That you have the inside scoop or the inside clues on how to work the machines or what's special about those machines, or the table games certainly more so. And a lot of casinos will say, well, employees are not allowed to play on site, which is often true, but there's like markets like ours, there's easy access to other facilities, and so folks will often take that, what they believe is that knowledge, and go apply it to a neighboring casino.
And conversely, individuals who are heavy gamblers may see working in a casino as a dream job.
That's right. And we've, again, I think I've said this to this group before, but, just in setting up the Game Sense Center, and certainly the Game Sense advisors have heard this, we've had staff at the casino identify as being people with gambling disorder, currently active in 12-step programs and/or treatment, but recognize they either like that environment or they needed jobs. And so we want to continue to also make sure that they are aware that there are resources available. A lot of training. We do a ton of training at the council. I'm kind of not going to go into great detail because there's a very extensive calendar, but we run regularly an 8-week training institute, so that will continue to run, and we will raise the awareness of the clinicians that are at that 8-week training institute. We are doing, in addition to that, trainings or presentations really across the state. Here's a small sampling of them. We have ones in Amherst, Andover, Boston, Canton, Chelsea, Duxbury, Fall River, Ipswich, Milford, New Bedford, Northampton, Plymouth, Somerville, Springfield, Tewksbury, Wilbraham, and Worcester. So the staff is out and about, really trying to get the message out there, build capacity, provide technical assistance, and address some of the issues that we know that we have in Massachusetts, which is there are pockets of space where it feels like there's no one out there to provide help, and we really want to build capacity in those areas. And just some of the representative organizations or companies that we're going to be addressing are the Western Mass Prevention Coalition, Office of Community Corrections, the Chelsea Soldiers Home, Alternative High School in Fall River, Dorchester Drug Court. Gives you a sampling of some of the folks that we'll really be talking with. And, we think it's very important that we work not in silos, and that we work in collaboration with our neighbors. And so we are also keynoting at the Maine Conference on Problem Gambling and also the Rhode Island Conference on Problem Gambling. We're asked to do both, which is also wonderful. In addition, one of our major pieces is obviously we build capacity of treatment providers, and we want to make sure that the right people are getting the right help. So we are working hand in hand with our major funder, which is the Department of Public Health Bureau of Substance Abuse Services, making sure we're getting out to all their provider meetings and addressing the issues there. But I think the major thing to mention, and I think you all know this, is that Harvard Medical School's Division on Addictions at Cambridge Health Alliance has been fantastic in putting forth a collaborative effort around Screening Day. And so March 8th is technically Screening Day, although we certainly encourage people who are interested, if they can't do it on the 8th, to do it throughout the month. And so we're directing people to that website. We are doing a number of screening opportunities ourselves. The lottery has invited us to come into all their offices, their regional offices, and their main claim center in Braintree, and do screening tables there. So that is another thing that you'll see happening around the state. And then finally, recovery. I think it's important for us to continue to remind folks that are in recovery that they are in a high-risk category. So we're both celebrating recovery and making sure people know that you can get better from this disorder, but also making sure that folks know that if you have if you have a drug or alcohol disorder or a mental health disorder, you're at really high risk. And so visiting recovery centers, there are, I think now 8 around the state that the Department of Public Health funds. There are a number of recovery high schools. We spend a lot of time building those relationships. And then doing a lot of enrollment and driving people towards our recovery gambling-free weekend in May, and kind of really raising the awareness of that throughout March. In addition, the basics. In addition to the posters, we have these buttons. I brought each of you a button. I'm not going to walk them up to you, but I hope to see each of you wearing them at some point this month. And
that's it. I just wanted to kind of give you a quick overview, see if you have any questions about some of the work that's underway or about the month specifically.
Can I ask you a question about the narrative you were giving us about Thomas? You talked about some of the triggers of where he's living. Just give me an idea of what some of those triggers are that puts him back at risk.
So the two things. One is that he's reported, he and his dad is very connected still with him, which is great news. Went and we're going to set up his room, and he opened the bureau drawer, and there was remnants of drug use in the drawers. And then there's no set kind of policy on gambling, and so there is gambling going on, scratch tickets, all of that in the environment where he's living now. This is state housing that he's in. So, it just proves the point that, he's out of prison and he's got housing, which is more than a lot of folks can say. So he's on a good path, but there's still so much that needs to be done that, that could connect him back to drug trafficking and gambling, or both.
Anybody else?
Marlene, I always enjoy when you come, and it's always educational. I just want to thank you for the passion and the good work, and I know you have a great working relationship with Mark. Every time I meet with Mark, there's always something that comes up about the council or you in particular, so I just take the opportunity to thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Agreed.
Great.
Thanks, folks.
Give us a button.
All right.
I'll leave the button.
It's just a couple minutes before 1. We'll take a half-hour break and come back and pick up legal division, item number 6 at 1:30. Does that work for everybody? All right.
All these